Good evening and welcome to We Are Paradox Media. I am your weekend host, TessaTNT, and I just wanted to welcome you guys all out tonight. This is our very first broadcast. We're testing out the systems, and I'm joined by Mr. Kevin Ian Beegle, and we are going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and our plans for the show, what we've been working on so far, and our shows that we have planned for the future. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, Teresa, how's it going?
Good.
Oh, there's Sleepy Dave saying, hey, hey.
Hey, hey, Sleepy Dave.
In the chat. And so, yeah, if you go to We Are Paradox Media Facebook page and do it, there's a chat station there. So we can see that, and I can bring it on to the screen and show you that, and we can respond to it. We also do have a call-in number, and let me go ahead and give that to you too, and it's 360-548-7070. So that's 360-548-7070, and that's just to take live calls as well. So you'll go into a queue. You'll be able to hear the show while you're on hold, and then we'll announce you when you get on. So it's a screened interview process or screened caller process. So it's a little bit different from what you're normally used to. But if somebody could do that sometime during the show, that would be great, because we need to test it out and make sure it all works. We did a dry run, but that always doesn't work, you know.
Gotta make sure all the kinks are worked out.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. And, I think one of the things I'm really excited about is doing this together, because, we've talked to each other in person now and on the phone, and we really liked each other, and we came down and met you in Durango, and my wife and I met you and your partner. Or husband, I'm not sure which one it was. So that was a lovely time, and then you guys went over and almost got killed by a deer, and then and then looked for ghosts. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, we went down to the old 9R school district building, and back in the day it used to house all of the schools, kindergarten throughout senior year, and there's a few ghosts hanging around there, and we were just standing outside of Steamworks after we'd had a really good meal and some really good beer, and I was like, hey, instead of standing out here, let's go poke around the 9R building. It's just at the end of the road. And yeah, I didn't even see the deer when we first walked up, but I got pretty close and got some pictures, and they're pretty docile around here. Even in Bayfield, the deer use the crosswalk. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed by it, because, like I said, I didn't see it at all. Sam basically warned me and said, hey, if you don't want to get trampled, watch out. And I would have walked right straight up on it, which was weird that they were so tame, in the fact that there was really no kind of surprise in the way that it acted. So it was really weird, but it was great. And then you guys, did some. What kind of tool did you have with you that night? Whenever you guys were working with.
It was on my cell phone, and it's an app that I've used since 2012, and it's called Ghost Radar Legacy. They have Classic and Legacy, and I've had some really good luck with that app. But this one records any words that come up, and it shows you different energies and the amounts of those energies that are around or approaching you. So it was pretty cool, because it was lining up with, you'll get the cold chills and the goosebumps on one side or a certain part of your body, and it was kind of lining up with that. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think it was, and Sam hasn't done a whole lot of ghost hunting per se, but she's pretty sensitive to some things, and so she got some good impressions, and was telling me about a child maybe that had contacted her named Billy, and apparently there's somebody named Billy's writings on the wall inside there or something. So she was pretty excited about that. And yeah, it was just a good time. And so it's always interesting to meet people who are co-hosts on shows or hosts on other shows, because one of the things that I've found is that a lot of times, there's hosts and then there's hosts, and a lot of times hosts don't actually go out and do any kind of research or anything like that, and and that's kind of hard, because from that standpoint, and I understand. I mean, because when you're a host, you're really going to be, you get in a situation where you're kind of stuck sometimes in the studio and that's all you do. But then you really don't know what's new and what's going on out in the field and whether anybody's found anything. I just put up the number there. So if somebody wants to call in, again, it's 360-548-7070. I hope I put that in there right. I haven't memorized it yet. Yeah, so that's and so we both have worked as hosts on other networks before, and had thought, well, let's put this together in some kind of a form where people who are doing different types of podcasts and things like that have a platform to put out their material, because there's a lot of podcasts and shows out there that really should be podcasts. I mean, there's a lot of shows out there that are live shows that really don't need to be live. I mean, to be honest with you, if you're not going to have any interaction with the chat group, or if you're not going to have call-ins, or you're not going to have all these other things, then what's the point? I mean, find a guest, put them on the thing, record it well, put it on the internet, and go from there. So that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about and do kind of cool, different things with the technology that's out there. I mean, both of us have a little bit of a technical background. And what's nice is that, I don't know how old you are, Tessa, and I'm not going to ask.
I'm 40.
So I'm north of you by about a decade. Okay. But whenever I was in high school, you couldn't even imagine the kind of stuff that you can do now. I mean, it was like, if you even go back and watch old tapes of things and shows, you can do better graphics on the internet now on a live show than you could on a big network show back in the day. The fact that we can take titles and move them on and move to other kind of things like that. It's just amazing with the technology that you can have for not a lot of money. You can broadcast to the world. You can do all kinds of things. You can take calls. You can do all these different things that you never used to have to do. And to be on an FCC network is really expensive. And so, although we will say this, I mean, I'll say this, I don't know how you feel about it, but you let me know. There's a lot of quality stuff out there that never sees the light of day, and a lot of hosts that really have good stories, or a lot of guests that really have good stories. You never hear their stories. And so, I mean, for me, that's what I would like to do, is try to bring in the average person's story, incorporated with some expert guests every once in a while that does that. I know you probably are more used to big time guests, and I have some of those too. But a lot of times I'm just as happy with somebody on the radio with me that I can just dig into the question and ask a bunch of questions that that normally aren't asked. I mean, a lot of interviews go this way. It's like, what did you see? What did it do? What did this? What did that? And they never go into the whole other things that go wrong with it. I've tried to say for a long time that a lot of these phenomenon could be, high EMF readings, because we live, well, especially around here, we live in an area with a bunch of granite, quartz in the ground, big veins of quartz. So you've got gold, you got quartz. Quartz leaves off piezoelectric electricity. And is that what's causing orbs, or is it something else? I mean, I don't know. I've experienced these things, but I don't know what causes it. I have my opinion, but what do you think? Well, I mean, what have you found to be, if we're playing behind the mic, what's your favorite interview or type of guest that you've had in the past time that you've been doing this?
Well, like you said, I have had some really big guests on here, and a lot of times it goes really good, and they say that it's one of their favorite interviews because they feel comfortable and like they're hanging out with a friend, and because I don't do it like a lot of other people do. But for me, my favorite is to, like you said, get these small time paranormal teams in here and ask them about their experiences and their findings. And the more that you have in, the more you find out. And like you're saying, these EMFs and such, like if you have bad electrical systems in your house, one case I saw was right underneath the living room where everybody would sit and hang out all day, and it does cause different things, feeling like you're being watched. It causes you to have hallucinations, issues sleeping, all kinds of things like that. So it is hard to say sometimes what exactly it is, because it could be a number of different things. Even with the ones that are seen that are bigger, a lot of people say are swamp gas. I know the one I saw wasn't, because we live nowhere near a swamp or any wetlands. But it's interesting, the different things and the different outcomes that can happen. And that's what I love about the paranormal, is every story is so very different and unique in its own way. And so it's just a new adventure every time. And I just love helping people work through it and find answers and learn to live comfortably, cohabitating with whatever's there, or cleaning it up for them.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing that you do, that I was impressed by, is that you actually do spend a lot of time in people's houses. I mean, for me, I spend a lot of time in the woods. I couldn't spend time in other people's domains, just simply because I wouldn't feel comfortable in doing that, because I get a little claustrophobic and everything like that. So I have to go out in the woods. And but it is one of those things where if something happens to me out in the woods, I don't have to worry about that affecting a lot of people. Yes, it does affect a lot of people if they see something. But if they don't, I mean, they go out in the woods, they camp, they have a nice time, they go home, and that's it. They don't really have to dwell on being it. Is it going to happen again tonight? I mean, whenever you're at home, you don't really worry about that as much as with Bigfoot or sort of UFO stuff that happens. Well, I suppose big UFO abductions happen in people's houses, but the thing about it is that, it's a little bit different, and there is a lot of trauma that goes along with that, and PTSD does arise. And I know a lot of people who have seen Bigfoot who have felt like that they have a hard time dealing with it. And a lot of those people are ex-service people and ex-policemen, and I think a lot of the reason why they have some issues with PTSD is because you know this. When you're in the Marines or whatever, you're trained to protect yourself. You know how to. I mean, it's almost like it's a muscle memory reaction at that point in time. But when you're standing out in the middle of the woods and you see something massive and you've got nothing to protect yourself with, and you say, "What am I going to do at this point in time?" That seems to be the issue that a lot of people have, is that they were so scared at that point, the point that the thing was going to charge them or act in a certain way. which usually doesn't happen, to be honest with you. I mean, most of the time I've had people tell me, well, I was going to run away. And, you don't want to be sort of morbid and say, well, it wouldn't matter if you ran away. These things can outrun you. I mean, don't worry about it. If it's 7 or 8 feet tall, can you imagine the gait on that and how fast? I mean, it could jog and catch you, if you're going to go that way. But yeah, and so I'm really excited about the fact that the ghost and the ghost aspect of what you're doing, and how that might help other people who try to do other kinds of research, because I really think that sweeping for EMF is something that people who are saying that they're being abducted should do in their room, and also maybe try some different EMF stuff to see, or recording that to see if there's any kind of other things that might be bleeding through the radio frequencies or anything like that. So I'm kind of excited to learn more about that. And what's one of the reasons I like your show is because that you do talk about those different types of things as well. And so let's move to the question probably people are asking or wanting to know is, when do you think we're going to be ready to sort of push the boat out into the water, per se?
Well, I was hoping actually for last night, and I did have some shows lined up. But one of my guests, David Childers, I had to reschedule him because he had a death in the family. And he's in an area where it's flooding really bad right now. He's working in wheat fields, and so they're working really hard on harvesting that. So I rescheduled him for the 28th and rescheduled my other guests. So I'm hoping that we can kick it off here this next weekend, unless any of the weekday hosts wanted to come in and start this week. But I'm all good with as soon as possible. Like, I've been chomping at the bit to get back out and hang out with my friends and listeners, and keep talking about these things and educating each other on our different experiences and different ways to work with the paranormal, which I think the paranormal covers a broad spectrum. It's not only ghosts and spirits, but UFOs, ETs, Bigfoot, you name it, that's under the umbrella of paranormal for me. It feels like forever, but it hasn't even been a month yet. So I think we're doing pretty good putting this together. For a little bit there, I felt like my brain was fried because I was doing so much all at once. And so I'd find myself just sitting there staring at the screen like, what do I do next? But everything seems to be coming together perfectly. And you and Sam are really good team members, and we've been bouncing things back and forth off of each other, and I'm just really excited about this endeavor. And I'm still mind blown that you and Sam had come up here to meet me. I was just like, holy crap, I still can't get over it. But it was really awesome meeting you guys. And dang, I was hoping to go with you the next day to Mesa Verde and the Four Corners or whatnot. I even got the Jeep so I could make my way. But tell us a little bit about your experiences there at like Mesa Verde and some of the places you got to visit.
Well, we had to leave a little bit early the next day because we didn't get a picture together. We don't even have proof that we were in the same location together. It's that way. I mean, This is the type of investigator that I am. I mean, I saw Tessa. I saw Bigfoot. I don't have any proof, but anyway.
Right? Like, I was so sad we didn't get a picture together, but I thought I was going to see you the next day, so I just, let it go. But yeah, there's no proof. If you don't have pictures, it didn't happen.
Yeah, there's no proof. Well, the thing that had happened is that Sam had gone to take her son home he lives in Cedar City, Utah. And then she went and stayed with a couple of friends, and then ended up being in I'm going to say this wrong, Phoenix. And so I said, well, I'll fly down to Phoenix, and I'd like to see a couple things, and I'd drive home with you. I really don't like my wife driving through all the desert by herself. call me crazy, but I've because I have a terrifying story about that. In between, you know where Fruta is, Colorado. It's pretty, well, it's not too far away from you, really. If you go north to Grand Junction and then take a left, Fruta is the biggest town before the Utah border. And I got stuck when I was 17 in the middle of the desert because we got 2 flat tires outside I think it was about 25 minutes west of Fruta. And I'll tell you what, I was never so scared because, in the daytime it's hot and everything like that. But at night it gets cold and it is dark. Let me just tell you, whenever you're out in the middle of that sort of desert area, you have no idea how dark it can be. And of course, then I'm 17. Everything that I hear is, some sort of dog man or whatever. And it was terrifying. So I thought to myself, I don't want that to happen to my wife. So we left Phoenix and we drove up to Heber. And it was weird because we went through this town and there was a whole bunch of these alien chainsaw things. And I said, yeah, this looks like the place that Travis Walton got abducted. And I did say that before we found out that it was the place that Travis Walton got abducted. So we went to this chainsaw store and chainsaw art store. And the guy says, oh, yeah, Travis Walton comes in here all the time. And it tells him, and Sam took a bunch of pictures of some of the different old photographs of him and said, well, if you go down into the town, the phone box that he called from to say that he was back in, that he'd been returned is down there. So, and then he said, and the abduction site was 4.8 miles away from where he's at. So we went back up there and we took a picture of the phone boxes. And I was going to go outside and be brave and try to see where where Travis Walton got abducted. But then I saw that you guys have some big spiders down there. That's all.
Right.
I saw this spider the size of my hand, and I just went, that's it, I'm done. And I got it. I got back and went to sleep. We got up the next day, and then we were driving to come and see you because we were supposed to see you that day. But of course, you know how late we were because we ended up driving past like Shiprock and the Painted Desert and the Petrified Forest and Tonto Memorial and then Aztec, New Mexico. And this is like all on the way to your place.
I know there's so much stuff around here. It's amazing. It was crazy. And so then we met you in Durango. And like I said, the next day, Sam's daughter had a false, she's pregnant. And she was, what do you call that whenever you think you're having a baby, but you're not really having a baby? I don't know. False labor, false contractions.
False labor. Yeah. So we were trying to book it back, and then they said, "Oh, it's okay. Well, there's nothing stopped." And so we stopped at Mesa Verde, and that's amazing. That place, I've never seen it. It's huge too. I mean, it's like one of those things where a lot of times around here, whenever you go to a national park, there's one main section and you go into there and then you go out into the wilderness and you see everything else. But there was so many different locations that you could go and see, as like the big palace,
the Cliff Palace.
Cliff
Sun
Palace.
Palace is good too.
Yeah. So, I mean, and all those places I was amazed at. The energy was great. It's 8,000 feet up, so it wasn't too hot. And so as we went around and we went through all these different places, then Sam saw this native Navajo lady, And I said, well, she said she wanted a couple things from her. And I said, do you have any cash? And I said, no. And she said, no, I don't have any cash. And so the lady said, well, you're going to have to go get cash. Well, so she left. And I said, well, I'll just stay here with the lady and I'll talk to her for a while. And Sam was gone for about an hour and a half.
Oh,
And
wow.
she got lost. And anyway, it was a great time. I had a wonderful experience with this Navajo lady. And, I talked to her about teaching on reservations and being on the Yakima reservation and stuff like that. And she basically she just confirmed to me, a lot of different things that, to the people who are around there, they still believe that the spirit people walk the land, and every once in a while people will see them and, ask for certain types of, food, and you have to make certain types of offerings to, so that they can eat and things like that. And so it was pretty amazing, because normally my expectation with a lot of Native people is they're pretty standoffish right off the bat, because they really want to suss you out and see whether you're kind of, a person who's going to respect that history. To them it's history. It's nothing else. And it's the same thing for some of I was born in Ireland and I was raised in Ireland, and you do have sort of cultural beliefs that people make fun of all the time, like believing in leprechauns and fairies and stuff like that. And so it's amazing that, from a lot of standpoints, they kind of get that. They don't want to be, it's not a joke. They don't want to be made fun of. But it was an amazing time. And then we basically just tried to get home the next couple of days and tried to get back and get everything set up, because we talked for, a little bit of time about what we wanted to do, but you and Sam got on like a house on fire. And so, I found out yesterday, which makes a lot of sense, that I have an ear infection in my right ear. And I was having a really hard time listening to you guys talk. So you guys were talking, and then your partner, or your husband, he has a very low voice, and I was kind of straining to hear him too. But so that was kind of an interesting thing. But that I figured out I'm not going deaf, so that's awesome.
Good. Yeah, for sure. I was straining across the table too. I was trying to hear Sam, and I was like, I really want to hear what she's saying, but she's talking so quiet. And I understand, because there's a lot of people around, and not everybody has an open mind, and they might look at you like you're crazy or whatnot, but I really wanted to hear everything she was saying, so I kept leaning across the table, just trying to listen, and I had to say what a couple times, and I don't think I have an ear infection, but yeah, you were telling me that yesterday, and you were having vertigo and everything. Like, that's not fun whatsoever, and Vern is very soft-spoken.
Well, I think, well, yeah, I didn't want to say your husband's name just in case. Oh, I guess I could say his name now. It's Vern. But I didn't want to say, because a lot of times people, they have jobs, and they have different types of things, and even if they help you in some of the different things, you can't necessarily it's you automatically say, you fly your freak flag by just saying I believe in the paranormal, let alone then experiencing the paranormal. And so you just, it's one of those things where, yeah, it's kind of risky. And so from that standpoint, I in a lot of ways, it is interesting that, some of us have to do that and act that way. So it is interesting, because, even like a George Norrie or something like that, he'll kind of be like, well, I believe in some of this and I don't believe in some of it, but he'll never really tell you what he believes in and what he doesn't believe in. So, and that's a tough call, because, from that standpoint, when you actually put your name on the line and say, yeah, I'm a believer in this, and then talk about it, at a conference or something, which I've done, and then people come up but to be honest with you, there's only very, very few people who have ever criticized me for believing in the paranormal, and they're mostly my family, to be honest with you.
Right.
And I think that's more, and it's one side of the family, and I think that has something more to do with the fact that it was like, well, you have a master's degree, Kevin, and you have this, and you have spent all this money on this different types of thing. Is this really something that you want to say that you've experienced? And I think that for a lot of reasons that is true, that, a lot of people think, well, am I jeopardizing my job? Am I jeopardizing my livelihood, or am I putting myself in any kind of real risk by talking about it? But I don't think so, because, in a lot of ways, when you talk to people and you just are open with them about it. I mean, I was in the hospital not long ago. I had to trying to figure out what I had done the last time. Oh yeah, I had a hernia surgery, and I was in there for a hernia surgery, and I was just talking to the nurses. I said, "Well, you guys ever hear any ghosts or whatever?" And they basically said, "Yeah, there's a certain wing of the hospital that's known for that," and it's like, yeah, and they don't have any problems talking about it at all. From that standpoint, these are highly educated people. And, so I think a lot of the stigma that we put on that is sort of self-inflicted. And I know quite a few skeptics and debunkers. And, if you tell the truth, they usually don't try to beat you up. I mean, that's just like, it's whenever they think that you're lying that they try to rip you apart. But when they just say, oh, well, this is probably what you experienced or whatever, they can be kind of kind to you as long as you're open about it and you're calm about it, and they don't sort of rip you to shreds too much. But we've all known people who have claimed certain things that have turned out to be not exactly the truth, or they stretch the truth. I think that's more than one of it. It's the sensationalization of the process that makes it tough. And that's one of the things that I was really happy with you guys about, is that you wouldn't do that kind of thing. And in the radio business, you know about that. It's just like, well, I'm going to talk about this subject, and then you say, well, I don't really think that that's a valid topic because I don't think it's right. Well, yeah, I know, but yeah, I know, but we're going to talk about it, and then the next thing you know, it's like bumped up, and everybody's talking about it, and it's weird, and I don't know if you've ever been in that situation. Off air, they've kind of admitted to you that they know it's kind of BS, and yet on the air, they're just like, no, I'm a firm believer that this is what's coming down the pike, and we're all going to do this, and these things are completely genuine, and that makes it tough. And I'm talking too much. I'm going to stop.
Well, I've heard a few shows where, I'll contact the host and be like, you're not really eating this bullshit up, are you? Like, I'm not buying any of this because, I'm a good lie detector, and I'll pick up on when people are being honest and when they're not. With all the shows that I've done, I've never had an instance of that with any of the people that I have booked, but I did have to do a show and cover for somebody, and it was basically the lady involved with the Casey Anthony case, and from the get-go, I was like, I do not want to do this interview. I don't believe anything this lady has to say, but I had to bite the bullet and do it anyways because I was covering for a friend who was on vacation, and so that was the hardest interview I ever had to do, and I practically bit my tongue off during that interview, just like keeping from saying certain things that I wanted to, because you do want to have the utmost respect for your guests, because you want other people to come on and not be worried about being attacked. But yeah, All my bookings I've done have been people that I've done homework on, and I want to hear more about their story and what makes them tick. How did they even get involved in this? But for that one, oh man, it was just so hard. It was the hardest show I ever had to do. But yeah, there is a lot of that out there.
I'm not faulting people for it, because I mean, here's the thing, right? Every show normally, and we didn't do it on this one, but we've probably got to get it done, is to have the guy said, all opinions are that of the guests, and this is for entertainment only, and don't sue us, and we've got to do that. And so you've always got to have your little legal disclaimer saying this is all about entertainment, and these people are saying this for, whatever purposes. And you can't ever vet whether somebody's 100% accurate unless you really, really know them. And then, even then, it can be very hard. But, the truth of the matter is that some people will, go along with things, a little bit more easier than others. And it's tough. But then again, it's tough to confront a guest. And I've never really had to do that before. So I'm so lucky, because a lot of the people who come on as guests are my friends, and who I've met before or have interviewed to before or whatever. And so that's kind of a cool thing. Or I've met them while I was presenting at a conference or whatever, and they take pity on me and say, okay, well, I understand you were the last guy picked for the conference, but I'll come on your show.
Right. You're like, well, bless your pointed head.
I know. They take pity on me, and they say, oh, yeah, Kevin. They pump me on the head and say, oh, it's all right. I'll come on your show. And so, but, and which is great, because, from that standpoint, I think a lot of people do find that interesting, all the different perspectives. And you can vouch for a lot of people. And I think that what's interesting is that I've also found that a lot of people call people fakes because they don't like them. And I don't know if you get that in ghost hunting or whatever, but it seems to me that in paranormal in general, whether you like somebody seems to determine a lot of how credible that person is, and it's kind of an interesting thing that I went out with a certain Bigfooter once. A lot of people didn't like, what he said was happened. Was it a Bigfoot? I don't know. But the weird stuff that he said was happening was technically happening. And, that's his interpretation, is to say, well, that's a Bigfoot, but from that standpoint, and that was it. And then a lot of people didn't want to hear that because they didn't like the guy, and then you've got certain people who seemingly try to hoax all the time, but he's a gregarious type of a guy, and he's a hell of a guy. So you just, that's okay, And so, and then again, that's kind of the worst case scenario that you really don't have a defense for. Somebody says that you are a hoaxer in this industry or whatever, then that's your reputation gone down the hill for some people. Some people power through it. And a lot of people get accused of it that shouldn't be, in my opinion. But that's the interesting thing about it. But and I found that as a radio host too. It's like, yeah, I can't believe you got that guy on as a guest. And I don't know if you've ever got that, just like hate mail because you've had this certain person on as a guest. And and you're like, well, I think it's part of the whole scenario. Part of the job that we do is not to just talk about the paranormal itself, but to let you know who this person is. because then you can evaluate the story by knowing who this is a little bit. And so other than that, I mean, that's all we've got. Most of these things are campfire stories, Tessa, in my opinion. It's like you have no proof of it. I have no proof of what happened to me. I've had witnesses, but then they could say, well, that's your mom and that's your brother, and they'll stand up for you because they feel sorry. They'll go through the whole thing. But well, you can always give that eyewitness testimony is pretty unreliable, and we know that. I mean, we all do know that. But but that's the thing about it is, even if you have video of a ghost or a picture of a ghost or if a UFO anymore, anything like that, automatically somebody's just going to say, well, you photoshopped that and you made a movie of it, and that's the way that is. And again, it's the same double-edged sword. It's like it's almost harder now to prove anything than it should be because, I mean, I teach a class, with sixth graders that could probably make a pretty credible hoax video for some kind of UFO thing.
Yeah, technology these days really does make it difficult. And a lot of times you do have to send it to a professional photographer analysis or whatnot because there is Photoshop and there's different apps out there. One actually freaked my cousin out because she wasn't expecting it. And she's like, look at these pictures. There's a ghost in the back seat of my car. And I'm like, I think that's an app on your Instagram or Snapchat or whatever she was using. But it can make things difficult. And as far as being in the world of the paranormal, like I found at an early age that I had to keep a lot of things to myself because for me and my family, the paranormal was pretty routine. And then meeting people when I started going to school and everything and telling them my stories, like people would distance themselves away from me and thought I was weird because of all these different things I was saying. So I learned at a very early age that I could not share a lot of things with a lot of people, and I had to be careful what I said and be careful who I said it to. And that kind of kept me what I like to call in the paranormal closet until 2012, and that's when I didn't care anymore because there was people out there that needed my help. And so I'm like, forget it. I'm just gonna do this and let the dice fall where they may. But it can be hard being in the world of paranormal, but I think with everything coming out on television and YouTube, Facebook even, people are doing Facebook Live investigations, it's opening up a lot of ideals and windows and doors to a lot of people that were closed-minded or just never had experiences and have always wanted to. But yeah, it's a pretty interesting realm, but it's very, very hard to communicate to a lot of people. At this age, I really don't care anymore. But as a kid, it was really hard. I had very few friends because I was the weird kid.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think any of us kind of weren't the weird kid. But I mean, but that's maybe something that, comes to us because we are maybe weird or different or whatever, and we kind of spend time by ourselves that, we're not quite necessarily talked out of a lot of the things that we shouldn't see, if you see what I'm saying. Interesting enough here, Cody Mellor, I put that up on the screen there. He said he'd like to interview you because, I'm paraphrasing here, and if people don't know, I am blind in my right eye, and I have pretty bad vision in my left, so I have to paraphrase. But he said he'd like to interview you on his show because he thought that you were very honest and you're kind of the real deal. So that was kind of a cool thing. Nobody said anything nice about me yet.
Aw. Well, I know you got fans over here. I got Nikki over here, who she's who introduced me to you in the first place. Thank you, Nikki.
Yeah, Nikki, if you have a moment to call that number on the screen, and and we can. You can tell us, or if anybody wants to call. But if Nikki would call the number on the screen and come into the system, we can try out the system to make sure you can hear us, we can hear you, and if you have a prediction, I know Nikki likes to give predictions, and so if she's got a prediction that she's come to her lately, she can let us know. Let's see. But yeah, I think that that's one of those things. I never really have heard. Yeah, I was a pretty popular kid in high school, and now I'm a ghost hunter. I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's true. I think Zach Bagans has a new girlfriend now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I heard that through the grapevine. That Zach Bagans is going out with the girl Holly from. Like, what was it? The show with Hugh Hefner on it, where he had the 3 girlfriends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Holly. I'm not sure what her last name is, but anyway, apparently she went to the big haunted mansion that he has in Las Vegas and met him, and they started to date, and now they're ready to let people know that. So. Good for him. And I also, well, the reason that I'm commenting about that is because my friend had gone to the the mansion, and he said it's really well put together, and he said it was worth it. I mean, as far as what he was concerned, this is one of the finer places to go and see these types of artifacts and different things like that. I guess he's got some relics from different places and bits of memorabilia that are supposedly haunted and things like that. So I've never been to Las Vegas, but
are you serious?
No, I've never been there. I'd like to go, but and to be honest with you, I think that I will go next time instead of having Sam drive all the way to St. George, Utah, which is like 3 hours away or an hour away or something like that from Las Vegas. Just fly to Las Vegas. But then I wouldn't be able to see you. And I want to come back down with my like little camper trailer and just like set up somewhere in the middle of the desert and see what's going on. Okay, so I think somebody's here. Hold on.
Yay. I'm excited. Who is it?
Oh, it is Nikki. Okay, hold on. So I'm gonna add her in. Okay, Nikki?
Yeah.
Okay, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay,
I'm
so
listening.
You're officially the first caller ever.
Woot,
oh, you
woot.
You can't take that back. You can't take that back now.
No,
so that's awesome. So how have you been keeping, Nikki?
Oh, doing all right. I just came back from Mount Baker.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's right.
So,
that's right.
yeah,
You guys went up there and see anything?
Yeah, actually, there were a number of anomalies, I guess is what they're called. But yeah, so Lee Strauss is going to be looking through what he recorded, as is Dave Mason, and Matthew Hines, I believe is his last name, is talking about putting together some kind of video separate from what the other guys are doing. So anyway, but the cloud cover was awful. So we had some issues with that, but you did see some stuff.
Yeah.
And made things interesting. I did see something that was oval shaped with lights going around the oval shape, like bright stars, but it was definitely oval and fuzzy in the center. And then there were a series of 3 lights around next to and they were little lights. They were like faded little lights, but they were in a series, like a set of 3, going all the way around the rim of this oval. And I was like, what the heck is that?
Mm-hmm.
And then Dave comes up and he's like, what are you looking at? I'm like, I'm trying to figure out what the heck this is. And I'm pointing it out to him, and he doesn't see it. And I'm like, no, you've got to be kidding me. And it's gone.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I know I saw that. This is exactly what happened last time.
Mm-hmm.
When I was up at Baker. Actually, we were at Baker Lake on Saturday doing the Skywatch. And on August 2nd through 4th, we were actually up at a friend of ours, a friend of the team's, and there was a triangle above one of the trees, and I was the only one who saw it. And I'm like, okay, I'm not losing my mind. I know what I saw. I know darn well what I saw.
Yeah.
And it was huge. It just appalled me as to how big this thing was.
Yeah.
And it was a triangle of lights, of 3 rows of lights. They were like on the side of whatever this was. And then, how do you explain this? The bottom of it was like imaging the sky,
Mm-hmm.
but yet you could see the triangle shape move like towards you and then move forward away from it, away from all of us,
Mm-hmm.
and then move back towards the tree, and then farther away from that. And I'm like, then the stars underneath, what I'm assuming were reflections,
Mm-hmm.
were gone, and it went dark. Just this whole triangular area went completely dark, but you had 1 row of lights going around it. But you could see the darkness, and I'm like, I'm losing my mind. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I have a very large potty mouth. So I made a few expletives, and Dave comes over and is like, okay, what are you looking at? And I'm like, do you see this? He goes, no. And I'm like, oh, man. And it's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, just in a matter of seconds, this all occurs, and it's gone. And I'm like, okay, I know I'm not losing my mind. I know what I saw.
Yeah.
And they're just that fast.
Yeah.
They're just that fast. But yesterday, when we were with Lee Strauss and Dave Mason and Matthew, Lee had a flashing one.
Yeah.
And it was not we saw all different kinds of airplanes.
Right.
It was not an airplane. It was not a satellite. Between Dave Mason and Lee Strauss, I mean, they know their stuff as to what the heck they're looking at. And this thing was flashing at us, and they made sure that it wasn't a plane first, and we took the green, I call it the green pointer, the laser light, that's what I'm trying to think of, and aimed it up there and flashed it around in a circle so it wasn't directly at it. And this thing started flashing back.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, we got one.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things that you guys, the UFOI team, that you're a part of, that's one of the things that you're trying to do experiments with is intent. I know that you got some of the team went down to Takalak Lake and Isetti, and we're trying to do that same kind of experiment. And it seems to be something that I really think that that's something that you're right. I know Nikki for a while. I have no doubt that she saw something, and I have no doubt that this other guy didn't. And it's not because Nikki is necessarily better than the other person. I don't want to say it like that. You know what I mean? I'm not putting a judgment on it, but what I'm saying is that with a lot of things that you'll notice that, and I don't know if you notice that too, Tessa, is that you get like people who will experience things. Some people will see it, some people won't see it. And with Bigfoot, I've noticed that, like you get a lot of times people talk about the stinky urine smell and the really bad smell. And I've been on things where half the people smelled it and half the people didn't smell it. And I'm like, well, how does that even work? I mean, so I agree with you, Nikki, in the fact that, it's one of the five senses. It should be all the same. But for some reason, it's like some kind of a weird kind of communication that you're getting that's different from the other folks. And that's why it's so kind of hard to kind of capture sometimes. I don't know. That's the thing. I just really don't know. But I'm super glad that you guys had an experience. And where she's talking about is up by Mount Baker, and there's quite a lot. And I've interviewed some people up there in this small town, and yeah, they see UFOs all the time, and there are all kinds of different things. And it seems to be like this sort of biomechanical orb sometimes that flashes all kinds of different colors. I think some of the sightings that you're seeing up there is really a super secret drone, the SR-72 drone. And I don't know.
I was wondering.
Yeah, but because I know that's, from what I understand, that's deployed in a couple of different countries at this point in time. So, but and it is interesting that some people will talk about it's pretty close to the Canadian border, so that there seems to be a couple different places in Washington State where you'll see drones flying. One is up next to the Canadian border because there's really nothing there. For really east of I-5, there's nothing there. And the Columbia Gorge people talk about it too. So that's interesting.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who say that that the Columbia Gorge has drones flying in and out of it, and I don't know what they're doing, but that could be it. So anyway.
Well, like you were saying earlier, like how different people see it and other people don't, and it's kind of like with the paranormal as well. One person will see it and other people don't, and you're talking about the five senses, but at the same time we have to think about, the sixth sense, with which a lot of us have, some of us don't. When we saw our alien orb about 20 feet from our house in our backyard, it was about 3 or 4 feet in diameter, 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and moving at a slow walking pace. To me and my two daughters, it looked the same. It looked like an orb with liquid fire flowing through it in a clockwise fashion. You got the red, orange, and yellow colors just flowing through it. And to Vern, it looked like a globe with a pretty big bat, like, the mammal, a bat in it, which looked like it was glowing and flapping its wings at an exceedingly slow rate of speed. So to me it was funny because 3 of us saw it one way and one other person saw it another, and so it makes me wonder, is it some sort of cloaking that they use? I know Vern and his family, they're gifted as well as my family, but to him it looked completely different than it did to me and my 2 daughters. We saw the same thing and he saw something different. So it's interesting how they're able to do that, to place things in your mind or make things look different than what it really is to one individual, and everybody else sees what is actually going on. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, and that's one of those things that Nikki and I sort of, when we were on some things together with the UFOI team, it was funny because Nikki and I would sense things at the same time, and so and so it was it was kind of a funny thing because we would always be like, "What do you think about that, Nikki?" And she goes, "Yeah, I think that there's something over there," and I'd say, "Yeah, I think that there's something over there," and and it was like you couldn't really necessarily, because some of the people on the team are very, very science orientated and not. Well,
that's for sure.
That's a well, and I'm not saying that
that's a good thing.
Well, no, I'm saying that's a good thing, but I think that that's part of the issue is that some of us have to be drawn to the center a little bit. We have to sort of understand both things because it makes it tough to not in a lot of ways, and the solution to me, I think, Nikki, is the fact that we do have to have people who understand science and people who understand sort of this together, because otherwise, it seems like to me, and I know that I always sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but the answer's in the middle somewhere. I
agree. You have to have both sides of it.
Yeah.
To really get a full encompass, I was going to say encompass circle, but in order to get the full thing, the full bit of information, you really have to have all sides of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, you have to have a number of different people with different skills, different skill sets.
And trying to get enough people together that can do that without wanting to slit each other's throats, that's the hard part.
Yes, that's true.
Because I know there's been a couple of times I've expected you to start breaking out the knife and start cutting people.
She's like, now I got to cut you.
But that's it's one of those things, and we've all got to remember that a lot of people do this, and this is a hobby for a lot of people, and I'm not saying it's a hobby. I mean, some people do. I do this for the betterment of people, to try to get these spirits out of their houses and those different types of things. I understand that, but for a lot of people, this is their enjoyment. It's their break from reality, but they have promised to do the best that they can, and they tell the truth and everything else. And so when you get into the whole politics of group dynamics, sometimes it gets hard, but I think that a lot of us need to do that. So if you've got a group of people that you go out and investigate with, give each other a break a little bit, and understand that, maybe this is just what some of them are not going to have the same level of commitment as the other people, and some of them want to have different levels of sort of what comes of it. Not everybody wants to be on the next Zach Bagans or Paranormal State or whatever. Well, and that's tough because for a lot of times people that they do expect that this is going to be their ticket to fame and fortune. And I always tell the story about my son. My son was a really good soccer player for a long time, and he still is, I imagine. But we put him through all these different things, and he went to Northern Ireland. He became this. He played for the country, the national team, and everything like that. And and he really had the potential to get that. And then he said, "Yeah, no, that's just not what I want." So you put 2 and 2 together sometimes, and you don't always get 4. Sometimes you get 3. And I noticed at that point in time, it was me who wanted it more than him, and I don't have any talent. So,
come on.
Well, no, not in soccer. I mean, I can tell you that much. I can stand in front of the goal's 8 feet wide, and I'm only 4. So, okay, so I've got another person. It says that their name is Davenport. Do you know anybody named Davenport?
I do.
Okay, all right. So what I'm going to do, Nikki, is you've got the title of first caller.
Number one.
So so I'm going to give you something the next time I see you, if it's only just the big old smooch on the cheek, and I'm gonna let you go. All right.
Okay.
All right, my love. See you later.
Bye, Nikki.
Bye.
Okay, so that was Nikki, and let's see, Davenport. Let's talk to him or her.
Him.
There he is.
It's Sleepy Dave Davenport.
Oh, okay, there you are. Well,
Hey,
okay,
Sleepy
so
Dave.
Go ahead, sorry.
no, you talk to Tessa because I know you know her. I don't know you, Sleepy Dave. So I'm going to let you guys talk for a while.
Okay. I'm Sleepy Dave Davenport. A lot of listeners know, and for those who don't, I'm Sleepy Dave Davenport, and I'll be hosting here on Paradox. We are Paradox Media, a program called "The Future Was Yesterday." So, and we'll be talking about not only all things paranormal, but some, I would suppose, conspiratorial subjects, but dealing in facts and declassified documents and things like that. And whatever else interesting comes along the way, from UFOs, ghost hauntings, just anything that's out of the ordinary or supernatural. We could spin yarns all night about different subjects, as you know. So.
Right, and I've been hearing from a lot of our listeners that you've been polishing up on your doing your radio show, and you've already actually started broadcasting, and I've heard really good things so far, so that's awesome.
Yes, I've just been testing out the equipment and things like that, doing some pre-shows. Like I said, they're already up on Spreaker, but I might, if the guest that I have lined up, if his schedule allows, I'm hoping to go premiere around Labor Day weekend, but I'm not sure yet. I haven't heard back. So, and hopefully I can have some of the same guests if you'd like on actually on We Are Paradox Media. I think they cross over pretty well. One of them I'm talking to had he actually died and came back, and his experience and what he saw is quite the story, and that's all I guess I'll say about that for right now. But things like that, near-death experiences. You know, we have people. We've all read those old books of angelic encounters or things like that. And real quick, speaking of one, I have to say, I think I had met one at one point, and it was a very, very strange encounter. Several years ago, I was in Tennessee, and I was with a church, and we were feeding the homeless people, and this young kid walks up to me. He might look about 19 or 20. He had bleached blonde hair, and you could see his dark hair, is showing through. And he had a army jacket on and some pants. Kind of looked disheveled, and he walked up to me and he said, "Which line do I get in to eat?" And I said, "Well, this line here is if you haven't eaten yet, and then this line is for the second. If you want to eat again, you just get in this, no big deal." So then I was distracted for 1 sec by somebody asking me a question, because I was still talking to me. Right with you. He's like, "No problem." So I talked to the other person, and I turned around, and this man, the kid who I was talking to, was gone. Just vanished. And the problem is where we were, had the food mobile and everything set up feeding the homeless, there was no way for him to sneak off or behind anybody because of the perfect view of the whole area. So it was impossible for him to just vanish without seeing him walk away. So I asked the people who were in line, I said, "Where did that blonde kid go?" "What blonde kid?" "I was talking to this blonde kid. Where did he go?" "There was no blonde kid standing here." So that was one of many weird tales like that. I was, and I haven't told this one yet. No, this one just came to mind. I was in Tennessee, and years and years ago, I had a radio program, and I was interviewing this professional wrestler. I only remember his first name. His first name was Mike, but I forget his stage wrestling name. So he flew me out to Tennessee with a friend of mine, and we're hanging out in his hotel room, and unbeknownst to me, the guy was I'll say a drug addict. I don't know if he was an addict, but he was doing rails of cocaine in the room. And I'm like, oh, my God. And he was drinking, and he was totally out of hand. So to calm him down, his manager decided we all should go for a ride, which really isn't a good idea. So we're driving down this highway in Tennessee, and this wrestler turns to me because he's sitting up front, and my uncle had lived in Tennessee at the time, and he says, "Hey, man, do you know where I can get some cocaine?" And I said, "No, I don't do that stuff, man. Well, what about your uncle? Your uncle lives here. He has to know somebody." I said, "My uncle doesn't do that stuff, dude." He made his manager pull the car over. This guy grabbed me by the shirt, drugged me out from the car. Now, we're standing in this middle of this interstate in Tennessee. I am hundreds of miles away from home, and he was about to beat the ever-living poop out of me. And I'm like, "Mike, calm down." I was in tears. I'll be honest, I was crying. This guy is the ultimate warrior about to beat a 140-pound man down. And this guy, as he raised his fist to do the first punch on me, he dropped his fist and said, "Oh my gosh, what is that behind you?" And I'm like, "What?" He backed up and he turned pale as a ghost. And he kept pointing. "There's something behind you. It looks like an angel with a sword." And I said, "Okay." He said, "I'm sorry, man." He fell to his knees, asking me for forgiveness and crying, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. Oh, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have asked you any of that. Let's get back in the car." The whole rest of the time was complete docile. I mean, his behavior towards me anyway. So that's what he said he saw behind me. I don't know. Some people say it's a guardian angel. I don't know if it was my guardian angel, but that's the only time that I've had anybody ever tell me that they've seen an angel behind me. But that was, I thought I was a goner. I didn't think I was ever going to get back home. I thought he was going to murder me right there on the road and leave me for dead. I mean, the rage in this guy's eyes, he was beet red, his muscles was popping out of his neck, his veins, I mean, everything. And then just like in an instant, he went white as a sheet and fell to his knees. So experiences like that, there has to be something to the supernatural, to the spirit realm. And, and a lot of people say, well, that's a nice story. They can choose to believe it or not, but that is what happened. Mm-hmm. And my friend was with me in the car, and she didn't see anything, but she witnessed him. She's like, "What was your problem? Why is he crying? What happened out there?" Because he took me away. We were in the middle of the medium between the two roads. I forget which ways they were going, but they couldn't hear what was being said because of the traffic, but they could see what was going on. And so that's just a couple of the things that I've experienced throughout my really quirky paranormal life, from living in haunted houses and things like that. I had an aunt who practiced, not an aunt, excuse me, but my grandmother practiced astral travel back in the 70s, and once told my dad about things that were wrong with the house that needed to be fixed. And, she lived out here in Arizona, and we all lived back east in Michigan at the time. So when my dad went to check out, like one of them was, your chimney's clogged, so this winter get it cleaned out before you light a fire, or else, you're going to have problems. Well, my mom at the time was totally into it, so she, told my dad, check it out, make sure. And sure enough, the chimney was clogged, and the chimney sweep, there was chimney sweeps back then, had to clean out the chimney to get it, get the fireplace and everything ready to go for the winter time. So I know that I have had relatives into that sort of thing, I've seen people mess with things that I wouldn't mess with in the I guess we'll call it black magic or white magic or whatever you want to. To me, it's all not good. If you're, bending the will of the universe to your own will, I think that's I don't think that's wise to manipulate. But to each their own. I'm not here to judge or say what somebody should or should not do. That's on them. So that's it, really.
Those stories are pretty intense.
Do you have any other questions?
Well,
I'm just getting. I'm excited about this whole new network that Tessa has going over here.
Yeah. One of the things that I wanted to ask you, Dave, was really what kind of conspiracy theories are you into right now?
Well, it's not that I'm. I don't
researching.
like that term conspiracy theory, because once you go and you look at the declassified documents, you find out that they're the truth. A lot of it has to. Well, I know mind control has been a subject for a lot of years in the mainstream of, I guess, the paranormal or conspiracy radio. But really diving into those programs, not just MK Ultra, but MK Delta, MK Naomi, Project Artichoke, things like that. Just for instance, like Jose Delgado was a doctor, and he perfected. You can actually see this on YouTube. The film clip of him. He hooked up electrodes to a bull's brain wirelessly, and he was able to stop a bull charging him in his tracks by pushing a button. Other reports, Delgado's experiments where he hooked up electrodes to a brain of a 9-year-old kid and could control his emotions. And really, in my opinion, sick experiments that they've been doing to people. So they've been able to, it's called the stimuloceiver, if I recall correctly. You could probably look that up on the internet. But the stimuloceiver was, I think, created about 50 years ago or perfected. But Delgado and who else was a real pioneer in that sort of mind control experimentation and research.
Wow.
So, there was a declassified Army report that came out in 1976 stating what they had done up until that point, the names of projects, and how many volunteers they had for a particular study, and what they did. How they did it for this particular experiment, they brought these volunteers in, and they put them in a room and set up kind of like a social setting, like a cocktail party. And now this was before they decided who they were going to choose for further experimentation. So these people had to sign a paper stating that they couldn't sue the government or anybody for any adverse effects of these medications or whatever is being administered to them. But the problem, they had already administering LSD and other during this cocktail party, and each given a handler, and the handler was to ask questions and personal out of them under the influences of LSD and mescaline and things like that. So they had to fill out a questionnaire form. Of course, the report didn't go into details about what questions were on or anything, but things like that they would do to the test subjects. Pilots full of certain and have them take off just to see what would happen. Things like really stuff. And I think in 1962 is when all the experimentation was done. They moved the project to operational. I know it's in front of me right now, so I'm a lot on memory about it. But names of programs and things like that, good references people could look up to show that this isn't just, me talking or another fluffy conspiracy or rumor. There's hard evidence. And that's kind of what irks me about a lot of the shows nowadays is I don't know why people are not using, and maybe there's hundreds of thousands of shows that are impossible to keep up with. But from what I've heard, a lot of people don't do that anymore. And I don't know why, because the materials there. It's like, I mean, I loved it when I lived near D.C. I'd always go to the National Archives or Library of Congress, and I could look up this stuff right from the horse's mouth. I got a lot of notes from the mind control experiments when I lived there, as well as from the Library of Congress.
Yeah, I think part of that has to do with the fact that everybody wants everything done now, and so if something comes out now that says, "Oh well, I've got this document." There's been some documents that came out lately that were supposed to be the end all be all of all things. And, could they be? Could they not be? I mean, some people say they are. I mean, I have a hard time saying they are because of certain things that are part of the documentation. But, but the issue being is that, yeah, I think that you are onto something with this mind control stuff. And I think that there was a case in Spain, I think, that was pretty close to a U.S. Air Force base back in the 60s, where a lot of people had died from what was called ergot poisoning, which basically is a hallucinogenic type of poisoning, and they were saying that the CIA were doing tests on the whole village of what I can't remember what it was called now, but it's interesting. It went along with the same kind of thing that you were talking about around that same time. So,
yeah, I have a friend of mine. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying that from that standpoint, it's always interesting that people, whenever you do research in a certain area, something else will come up, and that's one of the things that's always amazing to me is that because I've lived sort of half of my life in Europe and half of my life here, I sort of understand. I mean, I get stories from both sides, and it's an interesting thing that I think they spread it around on purpose, almost, so that way, if something goes bad, they've got it somewhere else that they can pick it up and move it from there. But
oh yeah, always, and I think too, over the years, I don't have any significant proof, but just from my doing research and reading books and looking at documents and things like that, I think a lot of these shows these programs that are done have been infiltrated by, whether they're real agents or they're subcontracted through another agency to throw off. You can't blame the government. I think a lot of that has seeped into, I guess, the current field of research.
Yeah,
I'm amazed at the amount of skeptics now there are, and it's nice to be skeptical. That's great. That's fine. But when somebody just slams and slams and slams, even in the face of government documents, like show somebody the declassified Northwoods document from 1962 from General L. Lemonster, and they'll still deny it. If you read that whole program that he wanted to do, he wanted to use regular airliners to crash in one of them was the Statue of Liberty. They wanted to crash them into buildings down in Florida. They wanted to have American soldiers dressed up as Cuban refugees to start riots. And Kennedy shut the whole program down, told Lemonster, no, that's sick. And then we all know what happened to Kennedy.
No.
I'm not saying that is the reason. It's probably one of the many reasons why he was assassinated. I'm not going to get into that. It's huge anyway. But just to give you an example of how a government report or whatever can be declassified, and yet people will still deny it.
Oh yeah.
So denial is a powerful drug.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Well, Dave, do you have anything else to say? Because I think we're coming up against the time we're supposed to end this now. Yeah. Well, I think we were just going to do a 1.5 hour show today. Is that right, Tessa? You're the boss lady.
It's up to you guys what you want to do. I know Sleepy Dave has to put future President Mel to bed, but I'm free to go as long as you guys want to, like whatever we want to talk about. And I really wanted to get into what got us into the paranormal in the first place and what brought us to this point. But if you want to end at an hour and a half, we can do that, or we can continue to go on.
Well, no, I mean, I'm free to keep on going. Yeah, but I think that's one of those things, and you can see that now with a lot of different things, Dave. You can see that with UFOs. I mean, it's all contractors. Back whenever I was in the military, they used to call contractors mercenaries, but you can't get away with that now.
Really? They get offended? Because that's what we always called them too.
Actually called that, and it was okay to say that.
Yeah, I know.
In some of the old reference books that I have.
Yeah, but you see, this is the funny thing now. But it's you just don't know where things get led, and in a lot of ways, how many people outwit the military industrial complex, so to speak. The military itself has access to these documents that maybe shouldn't. I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting thing, but it's like almost like information can come from anywhere now, and is that credible source or is it not a credible source?
Yeah, I've been after a document for a better part of a decade, referring to a UFO report, military report that was made. The guy that actually took the report, he wrote the original report in the dossier, and the next day the base commander came in and said, no, rewrite it. So when he rewrote it, the soldier took the original report and kept it for himself. So I've been after him for a decade to try to get it, and I've only spoken to him twice because he's really leery about it. And this happened back in the 70s, and I'll end with that. So something that happened in the 70s, now it's almost 2020, he's still afraid to even let that out, even though he told the story publicly.
Yeah.
So just to show you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night and good luck, Tessa. I'm excited about your program and the network and what it will bring.
Thanks, Sleepy Dave. And I'm excited that I get to do this with you and Kevin and whoever our future mystery hosts may be. We still have a couple slots open, but yeah, I'm super stoked that you're here. I've known you for a couple years now, and I'm very into what you do, and you really do your homework, and so and you're funny, which I love. So I'm really looking forward to your show, and Kevin, like, he's so smart and well spoken, and I think we're really going to kick some ass over here.
Yeah.
Well, y'all have a good night. I'm going to put the future president to bed.
Good night, future Madam President Mel.
Have a good night, guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody anymore.
She's just so smart. I always call her that. That's my nickname for her.
The thing that I find interesting, though, but we should let it know that we're not all going to be on the same program all the time. This is just kind of one of those things we're just introducing everybody, and so it's very rarely, I would imagine, is Tessa and I going to be on the show with Sleepy Dave, unless they want us to unless they want us to be guests, I guess. Sometimes that's always fun to be guests. I like being guests, to be honest with you, but but
we're you get to let go of the controls and relax and just tell your story, because a lot of times on a show it's not about you, it's about your guest, and sometimes you can rationalize with them or share your story that makes sense with theirs, but for the most part the guest, it's all about them. But yeah, I'd definitely love to get together with you guys, like maybe once a month or maybe every 3 months or whatever, just to go over everything that we've been through and talk about different topics and subjects and such. But it's definitely nice to have everybody on tonight sharing our stories and where we're coming from and what we plan to be doing in the future. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah. I think so too. And, and I think it's one of those things where a lot of times people, they don't realize that, I have a paranormal view of Bigfoot. I'm going to put that out there. A lot of people will not like me for saying that, but I'm just going to say that. But at the same time, I will say this. I know quite a lot about archaeology. I know quite all about, evolutionary things and deals like that. So, I mean, I can hang with a lot of different people in that realm. And the only reason that I believe, that Bigfoot can do mysterious type things is because I believe that I've seen that. You know what I mean? I would have a hard time. My wife can tell you that I fought it from day one when we saw the Sasquatch that we saw. I said, well, yeah, maybe we could do that, but it can't do this. And then, something would happen and then you'd see it. And then it would be like, well, okay, well, maybe, yeah, but it can't do this. And it's just been weird. It's been a weird thing. So, I mean, I'm all in for people thinking it's an ape. I'm all in for people thinking it's a relic human. I'm all in for people thinking it's an interdimensional being because it might be all three.
Well,
not at the same.
Anything's possible.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that we have taken a lot of different. I think there's like 300 different nations in Native American nations in the United States and Canada, and we've taken all the names for Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Stone Ape, Grassman, whatever you want to call it, and we've all just put it in a big pot and called it Bigfoot. And I'm kind of wondering whether we haven't sort of homogenized it too much, where you're not really talking about the same thing in Texas, or at the Fouke Monster being the same thing as Patty in California. I don't know. I mean, it might look similar, but it might be from a totally different thing. And what I mean by that is it's a sort of a divergent evolutionary thing where, like a bat can fly and a bird can fly, but they're not related in any way, shape, or form to each other. Some things have characteristics that, they got there from totally different ways. And so, yeah, I encourage people to, have their opinion and everything like that. And believe me, Tessa, if I ever say I've got the answer, that it's somebody wearing a Scooby-Doo mask of my face over it, and you can pull it off and it'll be Old Man Smithers, because I don't know it. And I mean, that's really how I look at it. In the end, I just don't know. I just don't know. The more I know, the less I know.
Well, it's funny because, there are all those questions out there, and how does it hide the way it does? And how come every time we get a picture it's fuzzy? And it kind of made me think, well, I believe that this Bigfoot and the different variations of it have been around since the beginning of time, as far as, there are these different stories and different tribes and so on and so forth of this creature. People catch pictures of ghosts on film. Perhaps these fuzzy ones are actually a ghost of a Bigfoot. Like, that could be possible, or it could just be something that they know how to do as far as camouflage. I mean, there's so many different variations, so many different things it could be, and I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. I'm very open to what everybody has to say about it, because I am open-minded, and the more I know, the more I can learn, and I love hearing everyone's perspectives. That's why when people are in the chat room and they say something and then they apologize for saying it, I'm like, don't ever apologize. I want to hear what you have to say, and take that into evaluation of everything else that I know. I want to hear it.
Yeah. I think you're dead on in the fact that, yeah, you should never apologize for having your opinion about something, because really, like I said, I have a lot of friends that are skeptics, and they'll say it's all belief based, so it doesn't really matter. what you want to say about it. It'll come down to the fact that your opinion is just as good as somebody who has been doing this for 30 years. And I know people who've been doing this for 30 years are going to be mad at me for saying that. But at the same time, you have to realize that sometimes with the absence of proof, all things are sort of equal in a way, even though it doesn't seem fair. And I get that. It doesn't seem fair that somebody who just comes into this one day and says, well, I think it's this, can say that. But at the same time, that's one of the things that's true is, I mean, it's like me. People say, well, how long have you been looking for Bigfoot? Well, the first time I had a Bigfoot encounter, I believe, was whenever I was 17 years old. Okay. So that would make it, how old? Yeah, 31 years ago. Okay. So I've been doing this for 30 years. And guess what? I haven't proved anything. So, from that standpoint, I can't get mad at somebody for coming in and saying that's what it is. Because, I in my personal life, I do teach little kids. I'm a certificated teacher up until the 8th grade. And I will say this, sometimes kids can just come in one day and they'll just nail it. It's like, well, this is what the deal is, and it's like, yeah, and you say, well, that's, yeah, it is. It's just like, oh, well, yeah, that's just such a new, fresh way of looking at it that, that it actually makes sense to actually go down that route. Anyway, we do have a person here saying, okay, and it's from Tamara, and she said, not Samara, Tamara. That was supposed to be my wife's name.
Oh, really?
But I guess they spelled it with an S instead of a T.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, says hi from Walla Walla, Washington. And, so the Tri-Cities, sometimes they have a big international Bigfoot conference in the Tri-City area in Kennewick, which is pretty close to there. And I think next year they're going to have Travis Walton come, I think. If they're gonna try to branch out into UFOs and stuff like that too. So,
well, surprise, surprise, we have a caller on this end as well. We have a caller from area code 306. Who are we talking to?
Hello, Miss Tessa. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm okay. I figured I'd like to be since I'm the third follower, I might as well be the third caller. Just
right?
To match it up.
Synchronicities.
Exactly. And just to say hi to everybody that's out there, and Kevin that's here to be your co-host and start you up, and, all the best for your new adventure for sure.
Yeah, I'm super excited, and I think Kevin said he'll be doing Wednesdays and Thursdays. Sleepy Dave's going to be doing Fridays, and I'll be doing weekends, so it's a mystery who's going to be doing Mondays and Tuesdays, but we have a full 5 days before kickoff, so hopefully we'll be able to put a couple people or one person in those slots. But I'm super excited. I'm glad you're here, Ron, because you've always been one of my number one listeners and friends, and I'm so glad that you called in and that you're keeping up with your synchronicities and number 3 on the board, number 3 on the call log.
Well, that's it. Three is a mystical, magical number, Ron. I'm sure you know that. That. It's kind of one of the most...
The triads, yes, the Bermuda Triangle and all those other triangles. Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just a very spiritual, holy number. It was important to the Druids, is important to Christianity, important to most different things, really.
That's very true, that's very true. But, that's a good topic for one night talking about numbers.
Yeah.
In the near future but I'm just going to hang out for a minute or half a minute here and just say thank you very much, Tessa, for, hanging out with me and all you guys. It's been fun for sure. And, we're going to keep doing this for another few months and obviously, or years. And let's just have fun with it. That's all I can say. So thank you.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome, and thank you, because I wouldn't be here without you guys, you know, pushing me along the way and giving me that backup that I need to hear when other people are tearing me down. You guys are building me up, and I've heard a lot of people telling me for a long time that I just need to do my own show, so here we are. It shall come to pass. Somebody said, if you build it, they will come, so I'm counting on that.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. There you go. Good attitude with that, for sure. And, okay, so we will talk again. Everybody out there, take care. Thanks for the fun in our chat room. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks for calling, Ron. It was good to hear from you, and I will see you at
Cheers from the
Paradox
Great White North
after party. Cheers.
Yes, we will.
Bye-bye.
Well, he sounds like a really nice guy. You can just hear it in his voice. He's a kind man.
Yeah,
you know?
He actually sent me a Christmas present this last year, and I was excited. It came in a cereal box, and it was all taped up, and I'm like, what's in here? And it came with a bunch of different random stuff. I have this knit, I can't remember what you call it, dolly or doily here on my native drum right behind me that he sent, and then my Joker card, because he refers to himself as the Joker, as well as a couple quiche recipes. But that was pretty awesome that he did that.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's awesome. Well, I am going to have to go pretty soon. I do have to say that.
How about we, can we go till about 2 minutes to the end of the hour? Let's, are you up for that? Or if...
Yeah, no, we can go for like 15 or 20 minutes. Anything after that, though, I'm going to have to go take my medicine and stuff. So,
heck yeah.
And
I'm so glad you're feeling better. Man, that stuff can be pretty hardcore.
Well, like I said, it's one of those things where I've had sort of this sinus problem my whole life kind of thing, and it's it's just one of those things. Anyway, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? That's the way it is. But what I wanted to say is, so when you guys were talking, and it sounds like Dave was like this too. So when you were a child, did you always grew up? Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
I was born in Arkansas, and I grew up there until about, I believe, the age of 7.
And at that point, from what you can remember, you said that your family was sensitive. They pretty much all talked about it at the time, or was it one of those things where you guys never really talked about it and just kind of knew, or was it just like, oh well, I have a feeling that this will happen, or whatever? It's kind of an interesting thing. I know you said you had some Irish roots in you. And Irish people just talk about the paranormal all the time. That's it's just one of those things that they do, where it'll, it's just like, I remember growing up and like hexes being spoken about people and curses and things like that. And it was just like, whether they wanted to do it or not, it was threatened all the time. I'll put a hex on you, and so, it was just, which was funny because it was kind of a dual thing. They were a very Christian family, but at the same time, they never got rid of that sort of superstitious way of dealing with things, Yeah,
it's funny. My dad's side was Irish. My mom's side was Cherokee, and she was the more spiritually open portion of our family. She was able to not only see the dead, but she could communicate and talk with them like she's carrying on a conversation with a regular person. And we had different experiences while she was alive, shortly before she died, and throughout our lives after. And you were kind of talking about PTSD and stuff like that. Like as a kid, the different things I saw caused me to stay awake all night. So even today, my bedtime would generally be about 4 o'clock in the morning. unless it's a weekend and I'm doing an after party with my listeners and friends, and then I'm up until sometimes 8 o'clock in the morning. But it kind of gave me this different sense of reality, like just waiting for something to happen because things had happened. And it's kind of a form of PTSD, I think. You know, you're afraid to go to sleep because you're afraid of what might happen, so on and so forth. But shortly before my mom passed away, her and my dad had come out here to Colorado, and they went up to Denver to Mount Evans because her last name was Evans, and then they went down to Mesa Verde, and she had gone down to the Cliff Palace, and she went down in one of the kivas, and she said she saw 3 medicine men performing a ceremony, and they were very pissed off that she had interrupted it. And she came out of the hole, and my dad was like, "Hey, what's going on? Like, you look really pale, like you saw a ghost." And she told him what happened, and from that point on, she felt like every car on the road was after her, and she had even written a letter to my grandpa telling him how she was going to die, and she wanted him to help her plan her funeral. By the time she made it back to Arkansas, and we were staying with our grandparents at the time, we got in the car and they had a really heated discussion, and he's talking to her about how she shouldn't say these things, but she's like, "Dad, I know it's true. This is going to happen. Will you just listen to me? Will you just help me?" And he did, and it happened when she said it was going to happen. She knew exactly the day. She dropped me off at a friend's house, and the whole time she was white knuckle holding the steering wheel. "Don't let me get in an accident. Like, let me make it here and drop Tessa off," because she knew that I wouldn't make it through the crash. My older sister went with her and her friend, and she made them sit in the back seat so they'd be safer and buckled up. All kinds of weird things happened after that. The accident happened. My sister ran with a broken hip, a broken pelvis to the payphone and called. She doesn't remember any of this, but she called the house I was at and told them where we were and to come immediately, and we did. And after that, I guess that same day, my sister had seen a man in a black suit by a black limousine on the corner where they were hit. Like, as they had the accident, he was sitting there, and she said she had seen him a time before, and my mom had had a discussion with him. I found out years later. Turns out my dad said it was the devil, and I saw him in the same room my mom did, and right as soon as I saw him and he took a hit off of his cigar, it lit up his face, and you could see what he was wearing. He was wearing a really nice tuxedo with a bow tie, and I didn't even say anything out loud. I just, in my head, said, "God stands before me, Satan fall behind," and just like that, I was knocked out, and I didn't have to go through the whole conversation and whatever else my mom went through that led to basically her demise. But we had seen crazy fireball hit the front porch, come through our floor and shoot through our house. A ghost in the hallway a week before my mom died. I thought it was my mom, but turns out it was a lady that was about 2 inches off the floor, wearing a black lace dress and a black veil over her face. And the scariest part was her stopping in my doorway and slowly turning and looking at me, and slowly turning and looking back down the hallway, and she kept going, and then I could hear her go into my mom's room. But so many different paranormal experiences after that. And then in 2012 is when I saw my first UFO, and my dad, he was the big one about UFOs. Like, he had never seen a ghost until he was with my mom. So that really freaked him out, but he had always been a big advocator of aliens and UFOs. And so I had a belief in it, but I had never seen anything until 2012, and then it just seemed like it was one instance after another after another. So I've had a handful of UFO experiences. I have not seen an alien yet, but it's been really interesting. And, you know, a lot of people out there in the field try to claim that they're paranormal experts, but I don't believe there's any such thing because we're always learning something new every day.
I think you're right. I think you're so right. And I just wanted to address something that Tammy asked a question in the chat room, and she lives in Walla Walla, and she wanted to see something about UFOs, and she has seen them where it looks like they fly into the side of the mountain. And I can confirm that at Mount Adams, and Mount Rainier, according to the people on the Yakima Reservation, that both of those locations are known to be places where UFOs land, which I think is part of the idea of the Thunderbirds, which there's 5 sacred mountains down in that area. It's Mount Adams, Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, Mount Hood, and I think maybe I said them all. Anyway, I wasn't counting. But anyway, and in each and one of those places that a thunderbird lived, or a monster bird, much sort of similar, I guess, to Ship Rock, where you're from. But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. But I would imagine that a lot of people say that these UFOs land on or seem to go into mountains, and I think a lot of that has to do with sort of interdimensional portals or something like that. But not necessarily that it's a nuts and bolts type of a craft. But who knows? Like I said on that. But yeah, it's amazing that you've had that story. I don't know if you definitely would have PTSD. And I think for some ways, as a person who's a veteran, in some ways of armed conflict, that you should really sort of, I think we should call PTSD and combat stress disorder.
Right.
Because I think it is different, and I think that people want to liken it to the same thing, but it is chronic PTSD like that is is a terrible thing, and I think it can happen to almost anybody who's had some sort of a traumatic experience that they seem to relive over and over and over again. And I don't know how you couldn't with that story, because it just seems like, yeah, that would be so traumatic to be in that situation. And I'm so lucky that in my cases, I've never felt anything that sort of malevolent. And so, yeah, which is weird. I mean, other than people, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's so many, like I said before, so many different variations of PTSD, so many different things that can cause it, and I'm glad that the government is finally accepting it and saying this is an actual thing that's happening, instead of ignoring our troops and people that actually do need help. Instead of writing them off and sweeping them under the rug, like, they're actually finally helping these people.
Yeah, I think that's true, because, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people with PTSD, they end up just being they end up being shut-ins, and they don't ever seem to get help. And, it's I had periods of time for a long time where it's like, well, when's the last time you left the house? It was probably 3 weeks ago. I don't want to leave the house. I don't want to go anywhere. I don't want to do anything. And it's just like, so in a lot of ways people say, well, that's a good thing that you can do this show. But at the same time, I'm not leaving my house to do this show. I mean, I'm not in a radio station. This is my bedroom,
Right.
But it's like, from that standpoint, that's the way it goes. But it is, but we live in a very sort of a world where, we got to get together and try to understand some of the things that we're going through as people, and be empathetic about, our experiences and our scary, traumatic things, because again, it can be really debilitating for some people, and it really comes out. But I will say this, Tessa, that it's a strange thing, and I know that maybe you don't feel this way, but this has sort of been my experience, and it basically comes down to it. It comes down to the first person who a person talks to after that weird thing happens, as to how they end up feeling about it. And, because you can come across a Bigfoot in a pathway, for example, and, you can go away from it and you come down the hill and you could say, oh, I saw Bigfoot. And you could say, well, wow, that's amazing. You saw Bigfoot. That's such a spiritual thing, that's one way of putting it. And you say, oh, I feel lucky. Or you can come down the other thing. Oh, it's a good thing it didn't charge you. It'll rip you apart and everything else. And then all of a sudden that happens. It's almost like the response that a baby has. And I'm saying that not like people who get afraid of things are babies. I'm just saying that a baby oftentimes will look to its mother as to how to react to a situation that it doesn't know how to react to it. And so, if it falls down, a lot of times you'll see that, but they'll look up and they'll look at its mom and they'll say, if the mom is like, oh, come on, get up, it's fine, they'll be cool with it. But if she's a new mom, maybe nervous mom, and starts to freak out and, thinks that her baby's made out of porcelain, and starts to grab them and everything else, it almost really kind of scares a child. So,
they do look for that reaction and that backup. And so that's why I feel like it's important when my kids come to me with things, I'll listen and I won't put them down for it, because I want them to embrace that side of them and be able to build upon it instead of kind of shutting doors and windows to that realm in our universe. I think it's important for those of us who have those gifts to be able to build on them and to help other people than to shut it down and pretend that it doesn't exist, because it really is out there. The truth is out there.
Yeah. And I think that's true. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, as quantum science moves forward, they're actually coming up with the idea that a lot of reality we set up for ourselves, and it's almost a individualized reality. And that's true to a certain extent, right? Because there's me, and I know how I am, or how I feel about me. And then there's everybody who's ever met me thinks of me in a different way. It's a unique thing. There's maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or 10,000 different Kevins in everybody's heads. And then there's who I really am, which most people don't know. And it's the same thing about you. I mean, I've met you, but sometimes you'll get at it and you'll say, oh, I'm so surprised by the fact that, they did that, or this person did that, or this person did that. Well, you have your opinion of who that person is, and you don't always know the underlying things, or maybe you can't even relate to some of the different things because you don't understand the uniqueness of that person. It's like everything. I always tell my kids in class that no matter how mundane your life may feel, nobody's ever lived the life you've lived, and that's it. So you really are unique in that way, because they're the only ones that's ever had the experiences, or all the experiences that they've ever had. And so to try to understand how some people think or act or what they do is sort of tough. It's sort of tough. And we can be very hard on people for not agreeing with us, but they have different experiences, and that's the way it is. And from that standpoint, I just don't know what to do. I'm in awe that that your mom had that kind of experience.
Yeah, it's funny because she had it, I've had it, and my sister has had it. So I've let my girls and even my son know what I've been through, what you do when you're in this situation, what ways can you help yourself. And I try to educate them the best I can. And I just want them to be protected. And some people kind of have that beacon on their heads where certain things search them out, and I don't know what exactly the thing is. I mean, this is a totally another show that we could be telling all these stories in, because, I mean, I kind of did a haberdasher of little inklings of each story when it's actually several different stories. But, listen to your kids, educate your kids, protect them in whatever way you can, and have a listening ear. It's not hard to listen, and to support somebody, it is hard to kind of wrap your mind around what a lot of people are saying with their experiences, but try to be supportive. And that's why I like this group and a lot of like my paranormal team, Four Corners Paranormal Investigations, because it's a family of paranormal experiencers or people who have an open mind to it, and it makes a person feel safe. So I'm glad we have this group so people can come out and tell their stories and feel at home. And that's what I want to provide here, is a home for people to come and feel comfortable and to learn more about all the stuff that's out there, because there is so many things out there. It's amazing. But we are at the end of our time. I know you have to go and take your medicine and such. Do you want to tell our listeners what your show's called again, what nights you're on, and how to find you?
I'm going to be... I'm going to call my show, I think, On the Other Hand, which is a show that I'm going to talk to, again, that sort of thing that we sort of addressed earlier, that sort of science versus spirituality versus where we all need to end up in the middle. And so, and I'm going to encourage people to come in and, look at it from the other standpoint, look at it from the other viewpoint. And I know some people do. And, again, I'm a firm believer that, quantum theory and quantum mechanics is just old shamanism in a new wrapper. And so, I mean, the way that they talked about things happening seems to be so much into that, but you have to be sort of an expert in both. So I'd like to talk to people about that kind of stuff and talk to them about their experiences because, and I really want to talk to people who try to bring all these things together, which is an interesting thing, right? Because once you start to experience one thing, it's crazy because then you start to see other things and you start to see other things. And then it almost is like you don't want to even talk about it because it's like, okay, well, my family kind of believed that I saw Bigfoot, right? They're not going to believe that I saw a ghost, and they're not going to believe I saw a UFO, and they're not going to believe. But what's crazy is you start to see these different types of things. And I want to talk about that because I think that the research that we use to investigate ghosts could be used to investigate UFOs, could be used to investigate Bigfoot. And just like what Nikki was talking about earlier, that, their ideas of intention and talking to things and bringing it forward is so interesting to me. So I want to do that Tuesdays and Thursdays. Right now, just find me on Facebook. It's Kevin Ian Beagle, and friend me, and I'll have an On the Other Hand page soon and all that other stuff. But I don't want to take away from the main page because we have to. Sam and I have been working on that, and so the website part of it, and we have to keep the other part good. So although it's one of those things where I could sort of diverge into a lot of different things, I think for our sake, having it all together in the one conglomeration right now actually makes a lot of sense. So that's what I'm going to do. And like I said, Sam's working on it, and Sam may take one of the days from me or whatever, or what have you. But like I said, she's preparing for a conference this weekend, so she can't think about it right now. I've been told.
I know life keeps you so busy, and I'm so proud of her for going out and doing that. I know she's got 2 different talks. Is this 2 different conferences, or she's doing 2 different things during that conference?
It's the same place. It's in Chewelah, Washington, which is about an hour north of Spokane. It's put on by Kelly and Kawani Lapsaritis. I don't know if you've ever interviewed them, but they Kawani wrote a book called The Spiritual Sasquatch, and basically he was one of the first people who talked about Sasquatches being interdimensional beings, and Kelly has had experiences with UFOs and stuff. So she's going to go out and talk on both days, and I'm going to go out with my video camera, and I'm going to record a lot of different things, and I'll put it up on the media page, some of the interviews that we do. And one of the people that I really want to talk to is Chief Mahoney, which is a Zuni tribe member, and he's going to be there. And if I get to talk to him, my life will be like, I'll be so happy, because he kind of he would be an interesting guy. I know he knows everything, and he's one of those guys that can't say anything. So I'm going to try to. I am a druid. A lot of people don't know that, but I actually, participate in that, and I know a lot of Irish folk stories and things like that. So I'm going to put it to him a lot of questions as, Irish people think this. Is that what you might agree with? Because I know he can't say Navajo people believe in this. That's one of those things you don't want to say. That's one of those things you can't put somebody on the spot, especially if you feel like this is an oral tradition. And I totally get it. I totally get it. But I think that it'll be interesting to see what happens to some of these old legends if they can't find people to take them up on the reservation. So anyway, that's what I do. I deal in folklore. I deal in all kinds of stuff.
And I really loved having you on my show when I did, and hearing all your stories. And, I talked to future guests, and they're like, wow, 3 hours, that's a long time. But to me, and I don't know if you had that same experience when you were on the show with me, but 3 hours just didn't seem like long enough. Like, there's so much to talk about and so many things you can get into with it. But I really admire what you do and the way you work with the tribes. And I'm so glad that you got to meet a Navajo out here, which they prefer to be called Dene. I think it's the Ute tribe that named them through the federal government, Navajo, which is a derogatory term for them. But I'm so glad that you got to experience some of that, because they are very sweet and kind and spiritual people, and it really is hard to tap into them and get any stories or whatnot out of them, because there are those trust issues. They don't know who they can trust and who they can lean on with this, and a lot of things. One thing I know is they don't like talking about the dead. Once somebody's dead, they try not to even mention their name, because they think that'll wake the spirit up and cause a haunting. But there's so many different variations and different lore and stories, and I'm just very intrigued and so happy to live in this area. I'm so glad you guys got to come out, and I can't wait till you and Sam come out again. It's going to be awesome. Yeah,
I would imagine sometime either late this year, early next year, we'll try to do it. But like I said, thanks for letting me know that, because she referred to herself as a Navajo, and I think maybe she did that to test me a little bit. Interestingly enough, that's a lot of how a lot of Native ladies, who seem to know more than anybody else, to be honest with you, they do test you though, and they do test you. But she had said that, and then I started to talk to her about a couple different things, and like I said, I do know a language that she doesn't know. I do know a native language, but it's from the Pacific Northwest, and it would be so sort of mishmashed together. But once she sort of understood where I was coming from, I think she kind of gave up. And then I told her I was Irish, and then she forgave me. Because I said, yeah, we got a lot in common, and she sort of got it, and sort of, you understand that from a lot of times you wouldn't necessarily know, and I wasn't from there. She wanted to know that I wasn't from there, and I was from here, and yeah, she basically told me a lot of different things and a lot of different stories, and I'm just trying to sort through that now, because I think really she was supposed to talk to Sam, and she ended up talking to me. So we're trying to figure out what the important thing she told me was that I could tell her. But of course, I don't tell a story good enough.
You're Irish. You're supposed to be able to tell tales.
Yeah, well, no, I can. I really sometimes I can, but it's a anyway.
Well, I know that your experience was very spiritual, and it kind of caught you off guard, and so it is kind of hard to retain things when stuff like that happens, because you have emotional and spiritual stuff coming in, and it detracts from the mindful stuff when you're trying to process and retain things. It kind of takes over and causes kind of like a short circuit.
Well, I think you're right, and I think in a lot of ways, and it's one of those things where I was in a place where I needed to have some healing, and she did that for me in certain ways, and a lot of times, a lot of the way Native elders heal you is just to listen to you. I mean, they just are they very good listeners, and I think that was one of the things that sort of processed it out, and so and then she. Basically sang a song for me, and it was kind of a healing song, and I cried like a baby. I'm not gonna deny it. It's not the first time, and it won't be the last.
Hey, crying doesn't make you any less manly. I know there's that story out there, but definitely I think it makes you more of a man.
Well, I'm not ashamed of it. Yeah, it's like I said, it's one of those things. Well, on that note, I better get going to take this medicine here. I'm supposed to take it before I go to sleep. And I wish you well. I wish you well in this adventure that you're doing, and I'm glad to be part of it. And kudos to you for doing it, and showing the bravery to do it. And because in a lot of ways, You are a well-driven person. You're smart. You're intelligent. You know what you want, and by doing the right things that you'll get it. And so, in the end run, I've been in this situation a long time where, you used to work for somebody, and then they'll want you back. But I would say, regardless of that, just keep doing what you're doing, because you're in control now, and I appreciate that, and I applaud that, and I like working for a lady.
Oh, really? Well, I'm just so glad that you came out and you messaged me, and I was kind of joking when I was like, "Are you trying to say that you want to host a show?" And I was so glad when you said that you did, because, like I said, I really respect your perspective and all the time and stuff that you've put into all these things that you've done, and I can't wait to hear your show and hear where you're going with it. I mean, you and Sam are amazing, and I'm just really excited that we're in this together.
Yeah, I appreciate, but the reason I was sort of hesitant at the time about it was just because, you can really, in this thing, the internet radio business gets stuck with some real turds. And that's all I'm going to say. And that doesn't mean that I'm mentioning anybody's name or implying anything or anything like that. And those people just have their way of doing it, and that's not the way that we propose to do it. And that's one of the reasons we talk so much. And so, it's not negative against anybody else, and hopefully they won't hold it against us that we're doing what we like.
Yeah, hopefully just like me for them. I hope the best for them, and I hope everything works out. And, I'm not one to sit around and talk a bunch of ish. I like to keep it positive, keep the negative away, because the less negativity you have around, the better things are going to go, and a better, well-oiled machine we'll have, and things will just work out a lot better than if we go that route. So, yeah. I love your perspective, and I think we're on the same board here.
Yep. All righty, my love. Well, I'm going to let you go for now.
All right. Nighty night, love and light, Kevin.
And people better understand that in Ireland, I call everybody my love. Okay, it's not we're not having an affair. I'm just going to say that.
Right.
before the rumors start, I call everybody love, and that's just the way that goes. All right. Adios, Tessa.
Adios. It was good having you here. Thank you so much for doing this kind of coming out party with me.
Yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye-bye. All right. Well, that was awesome. You guys got to meet Kevin in Beegle, and I thought he was on Wednesdays and Thursdays, but I think he just said Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we'll get a schedule going out there. I'll have a lineup for you guys.
Hi, Tessa. I'm still here. The broadcast is off. I meant Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Okay, good.
So you're fine. I'm sorry I'm probably getting right in the middle of your broadcast. I'm sorry. I'm going to hang.
Not at all.
Okay. Yeah, I meant Wednesdays and Thursdays. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so he'll be on Wednesdays and Thursdays. We have Sleepy Dave on Fridays, and then I'll be doing the weekends as usual. And then Mondays and Tuesdays will be a surprise that we'll find out this coming week. But my show, I want to call it... Okay, so We Are Paradox Media is the platform that we're all doing our show from, but my show will be called Late Night in the Rockies, and talking about everything paranormal, conspiratorial, alien, UFO, whatever you can think of, we're going to touch on it. And we've had a lot of awesome guests in the past. We're going to have a lot of awesome guests in the future, and I'm super excited to bring all this new information and people's different viewpoints and experiences to you guys. So that'll be awesome. You can find us on Spreaker, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, and I believe we're on iTunes, iCloud. I mean, there's so many different ones you can find us on, and it'll be under We Are Paradox Media. Even though we have different name shows, this is the host site. So that'll be good. And just to kind of go over a little bit about myself, I've been doing this for the last year and 2 months, so I hit that year goal that I was looking at. And I've had a lot of paranormal experiences throughout my life. The very first one I had, I can't even remember. My sister remembers it, and she's told me about it. We used to live in a house in Boston, Arkansas, right after I was born. That's where I lived. And there was a ghost there, which is probably an old relative of ours, and he would sit on the porch in the rocking chair, and we'd play at his feet, and he'd wear coveralls, so on and so forth. This story was backed up by one of the paranormal experiences my dad had told me about that he had shortly after marrying my mom and living in this house. And he said he saw a man climbing a ladder into the attic, which there was no hole there for anybody to climb through, but he could see a man in coveralls climbing up into the attic. Well, when we decided to leave that home, and I believe we moved to Huntsville after that, this spirit raised havoc, like shook the whole house like there was an earthquake. All the cabinets indoors were slamming open and closed. All the dishes were flying out that were left behind. This spirit did not want us to go, but we had to move on with our lives. We moved to Huntsville, and then we moved to Siloam Springs, Arkansas. And that's where I had my first paranormal experience. The very first thing I remember, we had a thunderstorm, and we're sitting around in a circle in the living room because all the lights and such had gone off. And we're just talking back and forth, telling different stories. All of a sudden, my mom tells us to be quiet, and she covers my mouth. and she pointed out the window to where across the dirt road and up a little hill where there was a cattle field, there was a power pole, and right in the T of that power pole was a fireball. And this fireball sat there for a few minutes, and then it shot towards my house, hit the porch, went under the house, came up through the living room floor right in the middle of all of us, went into the kitchen where the hallway goes down towards the bathroom where my brother was getting the clothes out of the dryer so they wouldn't wrinkle. And as he came out, the fireball shot down the hall, and he collapsed on the floor, and it went out the brick wall in the back of the house and was never seen again. Shortly after that, about a week before my mom passed, is what I was talking about earlier, the spirit I saw. So like I told you guys before, I've had many paranormal experiences to the point that it would keep me up all night, just worrying about what was going to show up, what was going to happen. Is something going to try to drag me off the bed? You know, different things like that. I'm sitting in my bed, or laying in my bed, and looking out the doorway. And we used to have one of those awesome beer clocks that had the flowing lights. And you could see the green and blue lights bouncing back and forth between the walls of the hallway. And all of a sudden I start hearing footsteps. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. I'm the only one awake right now. Did I blink when Mom went past the door to get something out of the kitchen and now she's coming back and I just now realized it? And I can hear footsteps. And it sounds like a woman wearing high heels. And so I call out for my mom. And then I call out again. And then the third time I called out, this woman appeared in my doorway. And she was 2 inches off the floor. She was wearing 1800s period shoes, which I saw one in an antique store about a month ago. I was like, those are the shoes that she was wearing. She was wearing old high heel boot sort of shoes, lace black dress, lace veil, and she walked in my doorway. She stopped right in the middle, slowly turned and looked at me, and slowly turned and looked back down the hallway. And then she continued on to my mom's room. And I know it was my mom's room because all the other doors were kept open. Hers was closed. And there's a distinct noise when my mom's door would open. I think it needed some WD-40. But she went in, closed the door, and did whatever she did. For the longest time, I thought she was some sort of predatory ghost. And perhaps she had something to do with my mom's death. Years later, okay, so my mom was married twice, and in her first marriage, she had 3 kids. In her second marriage, 2, which is me and my little brother. So when she died, my sister and my 2 older brothers went with their dad, and me and my little brother stayed with our dad. Well, years later, we get together, and we're sharing different stories we have back and forth, and my sister, and I remembered as soon as she told me, oh my God, I remember this. She said she was in her room listening to a Michael Jackson record. And I believe it was Thriller. He's wearing this white suit laying on his side, pre-plastic surgery. She was totally in love with him and would listen to the record all the time. Well, she's listening to the record. Her window's open because this is Arkansas. It's very humid, very hot. She turns around, and the same woman is standing in front of her. And being an argumentative preteen, of course, she's like, who are you? What are you doing in my room? What are you doing in here? Who are you? And the lady told her, close your window. Kathy continued to argue with her. Who are you? What do you want? What are you doing in my room? And she said again, but in a more stern and almost angry voice, close and lock your window. So Kathy quit arguing with her, and she turned around, and she went to the window, closed and locked it, went and told my mom, and my mom, of course, was like, just do what she said. I know it's going to be really hot tonight, but keep your window closed and locked, and we'll go out and investigate in the morning and see if we find anything around your window. Next day we go out and we find footprints around her window. It had rained that night. Somebody had tried to get in. We lived right off of the bend of a highway. Not even a mile up the road is where my mom's car accident happened. But somebody had come off the highway, tried to get in the house, and who knows what would have happened. A week later, my mom passed away. My sister had seen her in the house after that, had an experience, and I'll have her tell that when she comes back at a later time. But my sister had reported seeing a man in a black suit, bow tie, very handsome, smoking a cigar, standing next to a limousine right before they got into the car accident, right on that corner. After my mom passed away, I had a dream where she came to me. And at first I'm walking through this park, and there's a sidewalk, and then there's grass on each side, and then there's trees at the end of the grass. And in the distance, I can see somebody walking towards me, but I can't see who it is. So I continue to walk, and right where we meet, there's a bench. And as we meet, I know it's my mom. And she came to tell me, well, first we sat down and she said, I love you and I miss you. And I just want you to know that I'm okay and everything's going to be okay. And I wanted her to stay, of course. You know, I'm only about 6 years old at this point. But she can't stay. She says she has to go. She can't stay. She really wants to, but she's got to go. So then she left back down the sidewalk and she was gone. And next day, I was really happy. I got to see my mom, give her a hug and kiss, and run down the stairs. Hey, Dad, I saw Mom last night, and she said she loves you and she misses you and everything's going to be okay. And my dad is like, what the F? Tell me that again. What are you talking about? Yeah, I saw Mom in a dream, and she was happy and she was okay. And she said to tell you that everything's going to be okay and don't worry. And so that was a cool message that I got from her. And I do believe that people from the other side can come to see us and give a message if they are spiritually inclined or know how. Sometimes it's hard for people, but she was able to come through and I understood everything she was telling me. It was not like a riddle. It was straight out. So after that, my dad was really in love with my mom, and he took it really, really hard. He had bought a house with the inheritance of my mom passing. We lived there for a couple years, and then we ended up moving to Miami, Florida, and selling that house. And then my dad sent us on a quote-unquote vacation to my grandparents' house, which is in Pettigrew, Arkansas, and that is where I stayed with my mom's parents. It was always a scary little house. There was something about it that wasn't quite right. And of course, I always had issues getting to sleep at night. And so one particular night, I'm sitting and I'm trying to sleep, and I can't. And then finally, I'm laying there, and this light comes flickering through my window. And I'm like, what the crack? Because there are no lights out in the chicken yard. Like, who's got a fire going? Like, what's going on? So I creep down my bed, and I peek out the window, and I see this bonfire in the chicken yard, and there's these little goblin things jumping around it in a circle, chanting. Some of them have little spears. Some of them have little drums that they're banging on, and they're jumping around in a circle and chanting. All of a sudden they stop, and then they turn to look at me. At this point, I'm slamming myself back in my bed, pulling the covers up to right below my eyeballs, because everybody knows that your sheet works as a shield. And you can see the figures getting closer to my window. You can hear them scraping and scratching, getting up to where my window is, and chitter-chattering back and forth. I'm stiff as a board, and they get off the window, and you can hear them going down the house towards my brother's room. That night, as I finally got to sleep, I had a dream that My bed, the top of it, was raising up in the air, and the bottom was tilting down towards the floor. And at the end of the floor was a hole that was full of fire and brimstone, and it smelt really bad like sulfur. The only thing that I had to keep me from falling off the end of my bed was my footboard, which was about 3 or 4 inches below my mattress. So I put my thumbs against my footboard and hold with my fingers as tight as I can on the other side, trying not to fall in this hole of fire. And I wake up from the dream. I'm at the end of the bed, which is really weird. And I'm thinking what a realistic, weird, crazy dream it was, and what made me dream this. I hadn't watched anything going along these lines. Where did this dream come from? All of a sudden, I realized I still smell smoke, but it's not like the sulfuric smoke that I had smelled before. It was a sweeter smell, like a cherry cigar or something. And I'm thinking, okay, I know my grandparents smoke, but they're both asleep. And they smoke velvet tobacco. They roll their own cigarettes. I slowly turn and look in my doorway, which I don't have a door on my doorway. I have these yellow lace curtains that are tied back. And there's this man standing there. All I see is this black figure standing in the doorway. And he lifts his cigar up to his mouth. He takes a puff of it, and at that point I could see his face and the bow tie. And I knew immediately who it was. And I said what my dad had always told me, because I had always had night terrors and things like that. But I didn't say it out loud. I was too afraid. I said it in my head. And I said, God stands before me, Satan fall behind. And just like that, I was knocked out. I didn't have to deal with him anymore, and he never came back. The little goblin creatures, on the other hand, ended up chasing my brother every night through the house. He'd run out of his room, past my bedroom, into the living room, back into the pantry room, which is where my grandma kept all her baking goods and such, and her canned goods, into the kitchen, and in the kitchen, there's this little 2-inch step. So every time he'd go to the end of the kitchen and run back, he'd trip over it and scramble and try to get away. And he did this every night, like clockwork, same time every night. Everybody's so tired, nobody could really get any sleep, and the very last night, my grandparents caught him and held him. And I think these goblins got him, because after that, they weren't chasing him anymore. And after that, no matter how hard he tried, he just seemed to get in trouble. And I heard other accounts from people that I told this story to over the years, and they call them kobolds, which I looked it up online, and they didn't look like that. They looked more like gremlins. Their ears weren't as pronounced, but basically the facial features, the body structure, everything like that seemed like gremlins. I think they're some sort of goblin. So that was interesting. When we got back together at this reunion, not only did my sister tell me she had had the same encounter with this woman, but my dad totally ished his pants and said, "Are you making this up? Are you comparing this to a story that you've heard somebody else tell?" I was like, "No, Dad, this really happened." And he told me about my mother's experience in the same room that I was staying in. My mother saw the same man, but my mother never knew a person that she didn't like. And my mother said that he didn't appear in her doorway. He appeared right next to her bed. And they had a full-on lengthy conversation. So my siblings and I have questioned for many years, is this why she died so early? Is this why she had these gifts? Is this why she knew when she was going to die? My oldest brother still has so many questions and is still working through so many issues, and it all roots back to, did Mom make a deal? And a lot of us have fully believed, especially the female side of my family, that perhaps he is looking for a bride. Perhaps that's the only reason that he does appear to us, because a lot of people don't believe that he goes out there and does his own work, that he sends his own minions, so on and so forth. I can't tell you here or there what the reality of that is. All I know is I saw the same man or being that my mother had seen. My sister has had run-ins and been assaulted by the same being. I think he's looking for wives. So then came the curse, and, once I got past the age of 33, I felt like I was safe. I wasn't going to be killed in a horrible car accident anymore. But my grandparents, being as old as they were, could not take care of kids our age, especially my brother, who was pretty high-strung. So we ended up moving in with our aunt and uncle, and my aunt is now my mom. She adopted me last May, and it was one of the most awesome days in my life. I'm super happy and stoked about it. But she, even still today, has an immense fear of the paranormal, and she doesn't like to hear or talk about any of it. She does not want to have anything to do with it. So when I came into the household and I'm sharing my stories with my cousins, which now my brother and sister, my sister would go and run to my aunt and tell her what I had told her, and my aunt, of course, would get upset and say, I don't want any of this in my house, don't ever talk about this again, and that's just all your imagination. So that really hurt my feelings as a kid, because I'm looking for some sort of support and some sort of backup and somebody to believe me, and she doesn't believe me, but I think it's just she was afraid. She didn't want to hear it. So living with them, I ended up getting baptized. I did a lot of LDS as a kid. I'm recovering from that now, but I really didn't have a lot of experiences living with them, and I don't know if that had anything to do with being baptized, but from the age of 8 to the age of 13, I still had issues sleeping, but nothing really happened. So then at the age of 13, I used to run different places. I'd run to the store, so on and so forth, and that's when I had my first run-ins with shadow people. And as I'm running, I can hear somebody saying my name. I look around, there's nobody there, but as I look behind me, I can see shadow people darting in and out of different areas. So I just keep running. I want to get home, and I don't want to encounter whatever these things are. Moving forward, my first encounter with a ghost animal. I don't know if you guys have ever witnessed those, but I'm living in a house with my first daughter, and these are actually cabins that used to be up at Mesa Verde, but they were sold and brought down into Mancos, and 3 cabins put together as a house. And it was a really nice house. I really loved living in it. It was called the Matchstick House. But one day I'm standing by the heater, and all of a sudden, I go to check on my daughter, and as I step to the left, this black cat moves quickly from right beside my feet and runs into my bedroom. So I go into my bedroom, I look in my closet, I look in all the other rooms because every room is attached by a door. I cannot find this cat anywhere. And then again, I found the same cat running from the kitchen up and over my couch, between my couch and my bookshelf. Look back there, it's not there. So that was my first encounter with a ghost animal, which I had never really thought of it or conceived such a thing, but it really makes sense. It was very interesting, and I wasn't afraid of it. I just felt like I have a cat that I don't have to feed or clean up the litter box. That's pretty cool. I can handle it. So, living in this house, we moved here about 15 years ago, and as soon as we pulled up, I was like, this is my home. This is home. My neighbor sister Lisa came up, and she's like, hey, a guy used to live here, and he died a long time ago, and so you might have some activity there. And we did. Here and there, we had some activity, and it just keeps ramping up every year. But my first experience with this ghost, who I'll call John, I'm home alone. I'm about to get ready to go to work and bartend at the casino in Ignacio. And as I'm leaving the house, I walk by my window and I hear a man coughing in my bedroom, which really freaked me out. Like, I'm home alone. Who the heck is in my house? And I'm so glad I'm leaving right now because I'm by myself. No way am I staying here. And you'd think I'd have a pretty high tolerance, but I didn't. I was freaked out because that was the first, like, actually hearing this spirit. We've had things in and out. My daughter has seen little goblin guys. She's seen different figures. We've had different figures coming in and out because we're all gifted, so I think we all have these beacons kind of on our head. The night that her grandfather on her dad's side passed away, she saw these little goblin guys, and she was keeping us up all night. It was insane. I was so tired, and I was getting kind of agitated, and I'm like, look, like, what's going on? You need to go to sleep. But she was too afraid, and she did not sleep until the sun came up. But she was seeing goblins, and she said they were sending little lights under the blanket because she tried to hide under the blanket, and they're sending these little kind of like lightning bugs, but little glowing lights coming into under the blanket. And she said that I was kind of talking and flirting with them, which I don't remember that. I remember being up with her all night. But she experienced that. As soon as it went away, my husband got a call that her grandfather had died. We had an angry spirit in our hallway for a while. And we also, out of all things, had a doppelganger of me. And the first time she showed up, my used-to-be youngest daughter, Nova, she was about 5 or 6 years old. And we had a couple roommates at the time, and we're sitting around playing poker. And she goes out, and she comes banging on the back door, and she's crying, and I open up the door, and she's like, why did you do that? Why did you push me down? And where's the dress you were wearing? And I'm like, what are you talking about? I've been in here playing poker with our roommates. Tell me what happened. She said that I went with her out to the tree fort, which we have 3 trees in the backyard that are probably 200 years old. They're blue spruce. They're very, very big. During the summer, it's the coolest place to go as far as temperature. It's about 20 degrees cooler under there than it is anywhere else in the house or around. And she said I went out there with her. I pushed her down on the ground, and then I laughed at her. She tried to get up. I pushed her down again, and then I ran into the house and locked the door behind me. She couldn't get in that way. So she went around to the back door and got in through there and proceeded to get onto me for pushing her down, which it wasn't me. Shortly after that, my oldest daughter saw her wearing the same thing, a long white dress. She was in the kitchen doing dishes, and I'm like, if this person's going to come around and do my dishes, she's more than welcome. Because, like, I could use some help with that. I've never seen her. Going back to when my mom passed away and our family was separated, I hadn't seen my oldest brother, Gary, for 30 years. And so I decided to get a plane ticket for him to come out because I know he's a workaholic and there's no way he's coming out unless I make him. So I bought a ticket and he came out and he helped us finish remodeling our bathroom because he's got to work. It's one of his things. Well, one night he goes to bed, as he's from Georgia, and it takes him, he's got to go to bed earlier than we do. He's a couple hours ahead of us. He gets up one night, we're all sitting in there watching TV, and he comes in, and he's like, hey sis, what did you want? And I was like, nothing, I'm just sitting here watching TV with the family, what's going on? Did we wake you up? I'm sorry if we were being too loud. And he said, no, you came in my room, you were wearing a long white dress, and you were telling me I need to wake up. And I was just mind blown. I was like, wow, did he just have like a really vivid dream? And then I go back and remember what Kinsey and Nova had told me about the doppelganger that they had seen. And so I got really frightened, like, is this thing going to try to hurt my brother? What's going on? did she actually save my brother from asphyxiating on the Mexican food and margaritas we had earlier? I don't know why she keeps showing up, but she has shown up several times to different people, all but me, and I don't think my husband's seen her or any of his family members that come by sometimes, but it's been pretty interesting. We had a dark spirit in our hallway. I remember when Vern was working in Rico doing a security job, and I'd be here all alone with the kids, and of course I stay up all night, and at the time I think I was watching some paranormal show or something, but I could feel somebody watching me from the hallway, so I'd move my chair forward, and then I'd feel better because it couldn't stand there and watch me anymore, and I'd even tell it, like, could you go away and quit watching me because you're making me feel really uncomfortable. Another time, my husband and I went to Pagosa Springs, which is about 30 minutes away from here, and my 2 daughters and my oldest daughter's friend were staying here by themselves. All of a sudden, we get a call in the middle of the night. Nova had gone to the bathroom, and when she came back to go back to bed on the couch where she had fallen asleep for some reason, she sees this really tall person under a white sheet. And she kind of froze, and she didn't know what to think. And then all of a sudden, she said its arm kind of flapped out. And so she took a couple steps to the side and then ran and jumped on her sister's bed. She threw up several times, she said, because she was so freaked out. But she's like, there's somebody in the living room. There's somebody in the living room. And Kinsey basically flattened herself against the wall. There's nothing out there. I'm not getting up to look at it. There's nothing out there. You're just making this up. You just need to go back to bed. Well, her friend Misty peeks out the doorway, looks into the living room, and she's like, oh my God, there is something out there. Oh my God. So they call us, and then we call Dennis because he's our closest friend to our house, and he goes, checks the whole house, nothing there, nothing where she saw this tall figure in a white sheet. Nothing. He ends up staying the night with the kids so they can be at peace, and everything was fine after that. I'm trying to think what else we've also had since 2012. Our first UFO sighting was not even here. It followed us home. We were at the motorcycle rally, and my daughter Nova is telling me, Mom, there's a light following us. Mom, what is that? And I'm looking around. I'm like, I can't look, baby. Like, I'm driving. I got to keep my eyes on the road. Well, as soon as we get to where the Rainbow Road and Highway 160B intersects, I stopped, put it in park, and at the time I'm driving my 1972 Gran Torino, and I get out, and I look up, and there's this ball that looked like it was orange, a little red, a little yellow, in the sky about 20 or 30 feet above us. And my daughter Nova's like, Mom, just get in the car. Just get in the car. Can we please go? Can we please go? So I get back in the car. We go to the house. That was the end of that. A few months later, I had my son. Dylan Redwine had gone missing. And I'm holding my son, and I'm thinking about this boy and feeling for his mother. Like, if my son went missing, I would want anybody who could help to help me. And at that point, I came out of the paranormal closet. But at the same time, I'm looking out my back door, and there's a horse field back there. It's a bright, snowy night, like there's snow about 3 foot tall. It's a full moon. All of a sudden, I see this 3 or 4 foot in diameter orb coming down the back fence. And it looks like a glass orb with liquid fire flowing through it in a clockwise fashion. At first, I'm trying to get my phone to work, and it won't. So then I'm like, next best thing, call everybody over. So I put my son down, I call my daughters and my husband over, and they all see the same thing except for Vern. He sees something different. My 2 daughters see the same exact thing I do, but to Vern it looks like a glass orb with a huge bat that's glowing, flapping its wings at a very slow rate of speed. Like, how is this thing even flying? And that was interesting. Another time I was trying to take pictures of the moon, because it had this awesome electric blue color coming off of it and reflecting off the clouds that were surrounding it. And I had been taking pictures all night. It was full moon. I believe it was around when the Perseids were happening, but I'm not quite certain. But I'm taking these pictures, and as a photographer, you go back and you check your pictures to see, is it blurry? Do I need to get my tripod out? What's going on? And at first I see it's a ring of lights on a cloud right next to the moon. There's a red one, a white one, a blue one, a green one, and I think a couple other colors. Then as you proceed, they turn from lights into these little shuttle-looking craft, individual shuttlecraft, and they're facing the same direction in formation as each other for the next few hours, and they're kind of tucking in around the clouds, but I still see them. I'm still picking up on them in my pictures. So if you guys want to look at those, you can go to my Facebook page and look under UFOs. It's in an album, and see for yourself. Like, you just got to zoom in close to the clouds, and you'll see these different shuttlecraft kind of tucked in along the way. Some are zoomed in. But it was very interesting and, kind of brought to life what my dad had told me for years, that aliens and UFOs did exist. I know at one point as a kid, we thought there was a UFO, and everybody else on the highway in Arkansas thought so too. Everybody pulled over. Everybody's standing outside of their cars just looking up at the sky, and there's oohs and ahs, and then all of a sudden we realize it's just a bunch of helicopters in formation. But these were quite different, and I wish my dad would have been alive for me to show him these pictures, but it was pretty cool. But we've definitely had a lot of crazy things in this house around us. My animals have been attacked. My Mastiff pit bull was lifted up to the ceiling and dropped in front of my son. My dog Gilly, she passed away this summer. She was 18 years old, but she had been assaulted a few times by whatever spirit it was. It pushed her into a shelving unit to where she couldn't get on her own because she was so stiff. It also shoved her in the toilet. And my daughter Nova takes after my grandma Nova. She's very tall, very big girl. And she's trying with all her might to get the dog out of the toilet, and the dog's screaming and skittering and trying to get out of the toilet and can't. Nova's trying to pull her out. She's screaming for help. I'm not hearing any of this, even though I'm a light sleeper. Anybody walks in my room or near me, I'm awake. I didn't hear anything because I don't think this thing wanted me to hear it. But Joe, my nephew, went in there, and he's also trying to pull her out, and with such force that when they finally got her free, she went flying across the room, which was really sad, but she was okay, and she didn't drown in the toilet. So whatever it was that was in our house at the time, somebody from another team said it was a wraith. I'm not sure, but I try to kill my animals, and even my cats at a few times have seen things when Wonky was still alive. He was looking back and forth really fast in the living room, and then up at the ceiling, and hiding in between my legs because there was something flying around. And then all of a sudden my roommate was like, "Hey, did you see that? Looked like lightning, but a lightning ball in a smaller form. It was really sparkly, kind of like tinsel, and it was right up against the ceiling." I didn't see it, but the cats did. So it was pretty interesting that he reiterated what was happening there, that the cat was seeing. So many different things, I can't even get to it. My kids. Okay, so one of the more recent things, I was working overnight security from October until, I think April or May. I was working overnight security at this apartment complex, and so every night I'd call the kids, say goodnight, so on and so forth, and they were telling me about their dreams. And Lily starts to tell me, "Hey Mom, I had this dream, and there was a UFO in the backyard," which is about 5 feet from my office here. "And it was behind the trees, and we got on there with some little gray aliens, and Floyd jumped out, so I jumped out after him, and then we started running, and then Floyd came in and said, 'Yeah, and then you tripped.' And then Lily reiterated, 'No, you tripped.' And so back and forth they're arguing about who actually tripped. Once they start doing this, And even Lily started laughing. She's like, hey, remember when you jumped on that alien's head? I was just mind blown. I'm like, at this point, I don't think it's a dream. I think it's a shared experience. And what the crack do the aliens want with my kids? And it makes me wonder about my son. Like, he's got 6 fingers on his right hand, and they're so smart and intelligent, and the smartest kids I know, which everybody says that about their kids, but it makes me wonder, are they actually seeing these things and experiencing these things, and are they okay? But they seem like they weren't really traumatized about it. They were actually laughing and thought it was a fun experience. But that's pretty cool. Like, and they also see things as far as ghosts and different things around the house. My daughters have seen a girl in a white dress running around the yard screaming. Little blonde girl. Supposedly a little girl killed herself in this house a long time ago. And even when I do my Facebook Live broadcasts, like, people are seeing not only orbs and stuff in my office, but I've heard people say they see figures in here, which kind of freaks me out. I did a ceremony with a rock that I took from my granny's house and put it outside with a penny and a dime. No, a penny and a nickel underneath it. Some old wives' tale sort of way to get rid of bad things, but ever since then, everything's been going pretty good. At my different workplaces, I've had experiences there too, but we'll get to that at a later date. I just want to let you guys know we are going to be on 7 nights a week. We might start off 5 nights a week, but we will be kicking off at 7 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Mountain, 9 p.m. Central, and 10 a.m. Eastern. And you guys can find us at We Are Paradox Media, and we're on Spreaker, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, iHeartRadio, iTunes. There's so many different places you can find us, but thanks so much for joining us and getting to know us tonight, and I can't wait to talk to you guys soon. You guys have a good night. Nighty night, love and light. Make sure you come back to Paradox Media because we'd love to hang out with you.